Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Podcana episode 54. This week, we're joined by Savjz to recap our tournaments in Atlanta and Lille, respectively, and to talk about set 4 decks looking forward. Anyway, Savjz, welcome back to the podcast. A very interesting time to have you on the podcast. I was telling Savjz before he came on the pod that I had encountered someone telling me what had happened on stream, like the misplay, and I remember I went to Savjz and I don't follow people on Twitter. I kind of try to stay away from it because he can be toxic. He was like, yeah, this happened. I was like, oh yeah, that happens all the time. I didn't realize like where we were in the community at the time. But since then, you made a video sort of explaining what happened. I know some of us on this podcast have opinions about it. Mine in particular is like I've played paper TCGs for a long time. I sat at many feature match tables and I've sat there with judges. This shit happens. It just does, and it is absolutely the case in almost every paper game. The issue is when you put it on stream, it becomes very apparent because you can run it back and you will see imperfections in play, and sometimes advantages are gained. And it is an unfortunate scenario. If there is no pattern and there is no intention, in my opinion, it is not cheating. I mean, strictly by definition, it is not. I think we should be a little bit more careful when accusing people of that. Anyway, so if you want to pass over to you because you did make a video and just let you sort of explain it a little bit. We can get all the good stuff after that.
Yeah, so basically, I'm gonna just recap it to someone listening who has no idea what happened. So I was on the stream and I played How Far I'll Go incorrectly, and it kind of like got some people, and I ended up gaining a benefit from it. I didn't even realize at the time. I only realized the next day. It only like next day. So the event, this happened on Saturday, and on Sunday there was like a Reddit thread where it's just like people are like really like, oh my goodness, like I cheated. It was intentional. Some people are claiming that it was intentional. And like I should be even banned for like 6 months, and like everything, things got kind of crazy. Yeah. So that was quite a episode. I posted on Monday as soon as I got home. I made my own video if anyone wants to check it out. Like just like explaining in detail like what exactly went down. And there's so much misinformation. The original thread that took off, it wasn't even like the original like the accusations were not even like remotely what it was. It then started like evolving, and then people were like, "Oh, this didn't happen." But then like they still like this, like people are still hating on me for like not even knowing what even happened. Like what happened was that I made an error, and what makes it bad is that I did end up gaining an advantage from my error, so that makes it look really bad. But like people are still like big part of the like stuff like whoever like is accusing me, they don't even know what happened, and like no one wanted to hear my side. It was just a really like crazy experience. On Monday, I posted my video explaining things. The outpouring of support has just been overwhelming. Like I just like Monday, Tuesday, it's just like my DMs just have been blowing up, and everyone like Brandon, it was like really awesome to hang out with you on the weekend, and it's just like you telling your like how you know that these things happen. It was really helpful at the time, so I want to say thank you, special thanks to you. Like it was like at a good time. So, but yeah, a bunch of people also on location. It's just like everyone who's played card games, like these things happen. Like on the stream, also there were multiple other. I don't want to like talk about too much, but there were multiple other matches that also had like incorrect like rules. Like rules were not followed. Like cards were playing without exerting mana, and like cards that had damage on them that should have been already banished were not banished, and like that kind of stuff. I have like a long. They said that Ravensburger wants the like, feedback of the event. I have like 8-point checklist, just like ready to go. I'm trying to like get in touch with someone from them, and like I really think that there's a lot that could be better to avoid these situations.
Yeah, table judges. I mean, to be honest, I can hear in your voice, which is it's still. I mean, you're obviously on the back end of some pretty negative feedback from the community, but still, in my mind, like. I mean, this is so common. It really happens very, very frequently. It can be unfortunate, and I do think that people have the right head about them in terms of like trying to make sure that these things are pattern based and they don't happen again. But man, if this is your first TCG and you think that this is abnormal, I promise you, it is not. Like mistakes happen. They're happening in your games when you're playing them too. The problem is you just don't notice them. But anyway, I'll link the video in the description.
Yeah, it's been like I was just to wrap around a little bit. It's just been like such a roller coaster of emotions because like Saturday was so wonderful. It's just everyone like everything was so great, and then on Sunday it's just like having one of those moments where like where were you when this happened? When something happens, like I was just like they're accusing you of cheating. I'm just like what? Like, I have no idea what's going on. And then suddenly, like, it's just like, but like talk, like, it was like my entire Sunday honestly was like ruined. Like, I was just in the middle of a draft. I was just about to start opening the packs, and I like start like furiously typing. Like, I'm just like, what is happening? Trying to like explain that, like, no, like it's not like I didn't do anything.
Yeah.
But then again, like then back to Monday, I make my video, and I'm just like really like the community. I feel so amazing that like the way this is on Twitter, on YouTube, just like everywhere. It really feels like people have rallied around me and really like understand that like this things can happen. So I'm like right now I'm still a little like shook by the whole thing, but things are definitely feeling a lot better now than they were on Sunday.
For sure.
That is why we have this judge system in place, where if you do a mistake and it's a game rule violation, you get a warning, and then if it happens multiple times, then the punishment gets harder, because then the pattern starts evolving. But if it happens once in an entire tournament, that's a warning. I think that's the way it should be.
I mean, it's a funny dynamic, because people who have played a lot of paper TCGs are like, yeah, obviously it's just this. Obviously it happens all the time, and like we've seen it before. It just the initial response is maybe a little bit intense, but those are some growing pains with Lorcana. I think people will realize that, and it will. I promise that honestly, no matter what they implicate or what sort of procedures they put in place on the future match table, it probably will happen again. I think you just need to be understanding. There's definitely measures we can take to reduce it, but it's an inevitability.
So one more thing. Oh my goodness, I feel like I have to say it. So it's just like after talking to some of the other like individuals who also like had things not go super right, like it's just like being in the spotlight, like on the camera. So this is not what so it's slightly different for them than it was for me. But I'll first talk about like others, like just being in front of the camera, being on like the broadcast match, like it makes people nervous. Like you guys know, I used to commentate Hearthstone. Like I've commentated, like seen so many, like countless matches that I've commentated. And in Hearthstone, like the client does, it's digital, so the client does all the rules for you. But the plays that, like the magnitude of mistakes that players can do when camera is on them, like they can make some absolutely crazy plays. Even like really strong players can make some really wacky stuff happen. But now, like it's not only the plays on, like this is a new game. Like a lot of folks like might be new to the game. Like it's just like the nervousness, the cameras. And it can be really bad. For myself, like I wasn't nervous about the cameras, but what happened with me was that I, like you guys know, I play Pixelboard. Like I barely played paper like TCGs. Like I played Magic like 12 years ago in paper. I played Magic online. I played Hearthstone online. It's just like I played 3 set champions, like 1 weekly event. That's all I played in paper. Like most of my games on a Pixelboard, where it's like kind of like does the the handwork, like the dexterity for me. So.
I played for years and I still fuck stuff up. Like, I mean, it's just like, it just happens. Like, I don't know.
I feel like the other game rule violations that happened on stream that went uncaught were mostly more egregious, and no one really cared about them at all. But then, because you're a big name in the community, people cared a lot when you did a mistake. Because there was just to mention, there was a hook that survived a couple turns with 2 damage on it. There was a Gaston, a 6-cost Gaston that was not paid for at all. Yes. In Lille, there was
the crab thing, right?
Yeah, mandatory crab that didn't give +3 challenger to an opposing character, which would have helped them clear castle, which had a huge impact on the game, which no one even noticed.
Yeah.
So there was these things that happen, and we just have to be. I mean, if you don't want that to happen to yourself, you have to, of course, be careful that you do all these things correctly, but also pay a lot of attention to what's going in the game, so that you can. Because if you see that that's happening, and you say it on that exact turn, it's like nothing happens. Your opponent gets a warning and everything's resolved correctly.
Yeah, honestly, I only one of these examples like already taught. I think that I would have missed the crab thing. Like I think I would have been very liable to, because that's an odd interaction that Pixelboard just kind of helps with.
I would have never missed it, because every time my opponents killed my Merlins, I was like +3 challenger when it never mattered.
Yeah, when it never mattered. I wasn't saying it because I was like, does this out me as a Pixelborn player if I say this when it doesn't matter? Anyway, let's break down the tournaments. Let's go ahead and let's just start with Lille. Actually, let's have you guys break down your tournaments. The venue, I want to hear about the tournament software. I want to hear about how quickly it was run. I want to hear about your thoughts on 2-game format, your thoughts on 9 rounds of Swiss with 2K players, and just a little bit of how your tournaments went, like what decks you picked, how you felt about the picks after, all that good stuff. We can start with you, Kala. Go ahead.
Yeah, the venue was really, really cool. I think for the most part it was as well run as it could have been, the first 2 rounds I think were pretty straightforward, and then we hit round 3, and then Melee decided to die. So Melee died before Atlanta even started. So they were saying to us, "Oh yeah, as soon as like Atlanta starts, it's gonna get bad." But it got bad before Atlanta even began. So every time we wanted to find our table, we had to go up to a judge, and they had to use their own software and tell us where the table was. And there were multiple times when I saw my table, and then I like forgot because I went to like 265 instead of table 263 or some shit, and I had to go back to a judge and find it again. But you know, that's just what happens when a software isn't ready for that many players, unfortunately. But for the most part, structure of the event and everything, I did enjoy it a lot. It does help when you start off kind of strong. Like I felt pretty good. I was getting a few 2-0s, few ties. I didn't get my first loss until round 8 when it actually mattered if I even tied. So that it made the loss a little bit worse. But I think for the most part, for meta, if I was surprised about anything, I don't know. Maybe I shouldn't be surprised about this, but I saw a lot of Amber Steel. Lots and lots and lots of Amber Steel. So that was maybe the little thing that took me by surprise, because I know it was a really, really good deck, but I thought maybe people playing red-blue would kind of keep it in check, but that didn't really seem to be the case. I mean, it's always the case of, okay, maybe more red-blue makes it into the top goal because they just dodge their bad matchups. Maybe Amber Steel dodges all their bad matchups. And for the most part, I think if Amber Steel runs into decks besides red-blue, they'll probably just do fine. Like, that deck can pop off so crazy if they just have the nuts opening hand. So,
2K players, 9 rounds of Swiss. Your tournament sort of path could look vastly different from other players. Yeah, it's like some people like I played 0 red blue. I played all red blue. Yeah. Like it was highly variable. So your pick, obviously the meta influences like you're likely to hitting this, but some people, there was some blue steals just like fucking cruising to the top, not playing any red blues. It's a fascinating sort of meta game.
Yeah, I do really want the extra rounds. If you do ask me straight away what's one thing I want, is 2 things. I would love 11 rounds because I think that's the appropriate amount of rounds that should be accommodated for how many players were present. So I'd like 9 rounds on day 1 and then 2 rounds in the morning on day 2. Obviously, that does cut into time and makes the event longer and stuff like that. That being said, it just makes more sense in my brain. And also, I think top 64 cut for 2,000 players is absolutely insane. It is so brutal. Like you said, Brennan, if you just do not hit, if you have a really, really bad run, you hit all your bad matchups, like hit 1 or 2, yeah, maybe you can make it. If you just have a bit of a bad day, you're screwed. But
well, people want to play the game, right? Like you're doing a 3% cut to day 2. It's very atypical for TCGs. I'm surprised they went with it at all.
Yeah, but they know they make their money, let me tell you, because on day 2, €60 side event, another €60 side event. They know how to make their money, and people played. Let me tell you, I was one of the suckers that played, bro.
Yeah, I mean the EV was there with promos.
Yeah,
I mean, yeah, they make money from the side events, but you make more money from playing the side events. Like, it's the promos from the side event. Like they're going for crazy prices. Like we played one draft with Christina and with my wife, and we got like enough tickets for two of those like non-foil Cinderellas, and I'm just looking at like $400 to $500. Like even the moment, like so. I believe it's actually banned that you can't sell or buy the tickets, right?
Yeah.
But it was like we bought in for $35 for the event. It was like $35 for draft, and you get 4 packs, and you get like 4 tickets immediately, and you 4 tickets. And like I barely walked back like to the station, and somebody was like, can I buy the tickets from you like $10 each? I'm just like, so technically I could have just like made $5 on the spot just for signing up for the like. Yeah. But yeah, I wouldn't sell or I wouldn't buy. Like I don't think that's allowed, but like. It was so wild, like how valuable the tickets ended up being for the promo codes.
They ran out of promos in Lille. They ran out of Rapunzels. Yeah. I finished my last side event, and as soon as I sat down, my opponent says, "Oh, like it's the last event of the day. Do you want to tie?" I'm like, "Nope, I want all those tickets." So I sat down. I spent like a long amount of time finishing a best of 3, winning 2-1 to get my appropriate amount of tickets I won. I walk up to try and get. I think in total between myself and Kim, we had enough to get 3 more Rapunzels, which is the more valuable promo card. Literally walking to like, yeah, there's none left. I'm like, I spent time getting extra tickets, but now I can't get the promos.
I literally cannot listen to you Euro boys complain about not having Rapunzels, because I got to the venue on Sunday. I played 1 fucking event because I waited in a 2-hour line, and then I had a 3.5, 4-hour draft process. It was bad.
Yeah, together with a friend, we gathered 3K tickets, but wanted to buy them in the end. We kept asking, is there enough for puzzles and stuff? And then, when they were long gone before we arrived there.
You guys
so we
are
had
lucky.
to buy 8 Cinderellas, so sad.
Just had to buy 8 Cinderellas.
Between 2 people. But you guys are lucky. We got to play like one event on Sunday. That was with waiting in a 2-hour line. Melee crashed,
we farmed it, bro. I was playing round 7 of like the 9 o'clock event, and I was like speed running with the guy. Then we both ran over to like the last event. Oh, bro, we milked the side events.
Yeah, I played the easiest draft of my life and went through it, but I would have been farming that. Draft was interesting, by the way. I drafted all cantrips with the 3/4 Isabella that quest for 4 and has evasive. Oh my god, it was so unfair.
We didn't have a draft, did we, Moin? It was just sealed, right? I think.
I'm not sure. Yeah,
I think we just had
a starter deck, a booster battle, and then some constructor.
Oh, I heard the booster battle was so bad. You play a game with 1 booster pack. How? Oh my god.
To 10 lore, 4 cards in hand at the start of the game.
Awful.
It's
I heard.
fun.
Yeah,
it's fun.
Sounds kind of fun. I would have loved to play it.
Yeah.
So I played green purple in the event. And
what deck did you lose to a lot more? And tell me, I'm very curious to know what deck you were surprised to face a lot against.
Against Purple Steel, I went 2-0 once and 0-2 once, so it was not the end of the world.
Did you guys play? It was just a different purple.
No, it wasn't me. It was me.
Okay.
But in general, it's very hard to say because we don't have the full data of what everyone played. But from what I've seen at my tables and the tables around me, it seemed like there was a few things that I might have misjudged going into the tournament, which was Purple Steel was quite a bit more popular than I anticipated. And also, it might be a French thing because the tournament was mostly French. But they seem to love Bucky discard. And the Emerald Steel matchup is very playable for green purple. But the Bucky Emerald Steel matchup is like very, very difficult. It's completely different. So maybe my deck choice didn't end up working out super well. But then again, for example, I faced 1 blue-red. There's people that, for example, the top 5, there was, if you guys know Primer, he's always playing Sapphire Steel, finished top 5 in last Pixelborn season. And he faced 4 blue-red in his run. So his one just completely died. And so it can be very different depending on who you face. But from what I've seen, it might have been the wrong call. I think in total, I would have loved more rounds as well, which would have totally been possible because the delay that was just attached to Meelee's issues was like 3 to 4 hours. So we could have had 3 to 4 hours or more of gameplay.
I think same for us. I just want to tell a quick anecdotal funny thing. Players meeting, beginning, they go, hey, we're going to play some music between the rounds so you know you have 5 minutes to get to your table. And then when the player meeting's over, they played music. You had 5 minutes to get to your table. That was the first and last time I heard that music. They never keep.
Yeah, I don't think I heard any of it. It was 5 minutes.
It's so delayed.
I just gave up on that immediately. But the melee is just like it was pretty significant for sure. Like it's just like I don't know if it would be 2 hours, 3 hours, how much more it would have been, but like they definitely with those issues, like there's no way they could have added more rounds that day because it got pretty late. I don't remember what the time was when the last round ended, but it was like
it was late for us too.
Like 9 p.m.
I
don't know.
I got my standing at 10 p.m. for a reference.
10 p.m. Oh, like it got pretty late, but yeah. So like, I guess like when we talk about adding the Swiss rounds, it should still be on the next day. But I really hope that that's like one of the highest priorities. Like it has to be like get that like platform fixed and have some kind of like system in place if it happens again or whatever. Like, but yeah, that was a huge issue.
Savjz, what are your thoughts on? Because you played Magic. I know you said you didn't play too much in person, but I was surprised to hear about day 2 cut to top 64. I'm sure everybody was disappointed in that cut. I would be surprised if there's a single card game player on the planet who was happy with the 3% cut to day 2. But day 1, ideally, day 1 Swiss, day 2 Swiss, cut to top 8. I know Yu-Gi-Oh! Cuts to top 32, but gee, I mean, cutting top 64 single limb. I'm not saying it made the experience bad, but that should not, in my opinion, should not be looked at as like this was an optimal format at all. And I think that they're getting a lot of feedback that players don't want. Players come to these tournaments because they want to play games, and a 3% cut on day 2 is not good.
Am I correct in asking that it could be some Magic events? I definitely heard this somewhere, but I'm not sure which game it was from. Are there some events that the format is basically on day 1 once you reach a certain point threshold that qualifies you to
it's X? It's like X. So it wouldn't be a threshold technically, but usually it's just like X. All X2s make it. So they used to do, so in Flesh and Blood, they used to do, okay, top X out of the tournament, whether it's 200, 300, go to day 2, but they would have big bubbles sometimes, and players hated that, so they just go, hey, all X2s or X3s make it to day 2. And that's it.
So for me, like that magic stuff, actually, I'm like that doesn't like really provide me an expertise because, like you mentioned it briefly, my magic stuff is mostly from the arena client, and like I had that like brief stint of like a couple of years of playing arena actively, but yeah. So like in generally speaking, like this format thing this is not in my like wheelhouse. But what I would like to see are these two things. Like more games, so simply more games. It could be in any form, but like something like adding like some Swiss rounds maybe to day 2. And just like or just going best of 3, I don't care, but it's just like I want to play more games. The other thing that I think someone else like said that maybe another game does this, but I think it would be really cool, like the potential, like this is going to separate from that adding Swiss rounds the next day. But anyway, if there was like a mini main event, something. So if you get knocked out from the main event on Saturday, that there would be like another like a little bit smaller event, but still like kind of like another like main event, sort of like day 2 main event.
Yeah.
That would have like some like extra promos that would be a little bit larger. Like maybe that one would have like 500 players, and they would still be like very exciting and cool for like to compete for those who like were knocked out of the main on day 1.
Did I tell you about that? Sorry,
it might have been you.
Yeah,
I can't remember, but it might have been you.
That is Flesh and Blood.
Possible.
Yeah, Flesh and Blood. Day 1 tournament. Day 2 is cut Swiss. But if you are not live for day 2, there's another competitive event. It's slightly less competitive than the day 1 event, but yeah, all the players get to play another event because people are traveling to these events to play games. Simply. So yeah, Moyen, over to you.
Yeah, I don't mind being cut to top 64. I also think we should have had more rounds, but and also. We had, at least for Lille, we had side events on Saturday, we had side events on Sunday. I think that's good enough for people that want to keep playing the game. For example, our sealed event actually had like 400 players. So we actually had like a huge...
Wow, that's really big.
Also, I think the 2-round format, I did mostly enjoy. I still don't like the 1 extra point. I think it's totally unnecessary. But I loved not caring too much about the die roll and then just getting to play the matchup on both sides, going first, going second, and then really grinding out those games. So except for like, my wish list would be a little bit more rounds, and also my wish list would be a little bit more rounds. I lost my point here.
More rounds on the keep the 2-game format, or
all right. Would be more rounds and also not the extra point.
Yeah.
And then I think the format's completely fine.
Yeah,
I think the extra point might be necessary though for like tiebreakers, because I think if it's like 3-point like segments or like whatever, however it's done, I think there might be the circumstances where like it's always going to be people at 38, 41, 44, and it's just going to be like basically the cutoff would be just 100 people at that 44 points, and I think that might be problematic, or having it at 41 points. But like with the extra point, it sort of adds that like some people will have 40, some people will have 41, some people will have 43. Whereas like so the tiebreaker situation and kind of like getting left out with the same points happens less.
While that is true, I think that's essentially still tiebreaker. It's just now the tiebreaker is how often did you 2-0, and it's like the first tiebreaker essentially. So I think it looks better, but essentially it really is the same thing.
2-0ing was really important. I spoke to people.
I was wondering if it like feels worse. Like it kind of like, I think it might feel like emotional level. Like, it might feel worse to like get left out with the same amount of points than it might be if on like a different system.
Yeah, I think fundamentally for me, I think that the amount of rounds was like comically low. You guys mentioned 11, but I would not be super satisfied with that. It'd be better for sure, but I would much.
If you do the math to how much it should be in terms of how like if you literally start from the ground where like 8 people, it's 3 rounds, 16 people, it's 4. You do the math going all the way up. 11 is like 2048. So I think that should have been the standard. Like it just should have been that. But again, could have been timing issues. Could have been a few different things.
Yeah. That's interesting. I played Flesh and Blood tournaments 1,000, like 14 rounds of Swiss. Yeah, but I don't know. I like more rounds of Swiss, and then I like cutting the top 8. Cutting the top 64 is wild in my opinion. But I think you're probably more used to it because I think they do it in one piece, right? Like they cut like that.
Yeah, I think the biggest event I had was more than 2048 players, and that was 12 rounds. So they also follow the guidelines that Kava pointed out.
Yeah. I'll just break down my tournament real quick. Savjz, if you have anything now, just feel free to pop in. I played Ruby Amethyst, which I was very open about. I was extremely happy with that pick, by the way. I think it was a super good pick on the day because of the highly variable Swiss rounds, like the matchups you could get. Just a strong deck on the play, strong deck on the draw, and it was really all I needed. The decks I did lose to, so I had 6 2-0s and 3 0-2s. I started out 2-0 and then went double 0-2. I almost dropped, to be honest. I just faced some green steel and had some early Ursula plus discard packages, and then just like every single time turn 5 beast, and I just could not beat it. But that's how it goes, and that's one of those matchups that I felt like I was a little bit weaker against. I also practiced it. I did make one critical ink mistake in one of those games, and I did lose on my own volition. Basically, I inked a Madam Fox, and I did not play around. Let the Storm Rage on Ursula, clear my board, and I would have needed the Fox to bounce one of those back and actually clear the Ursula. I couldn't, so I lost that game. So it was like one really critical mistake I made on the day. And then I lost an 0-2 to a blue-red. And it was a very tight game. The opponent is probably the best opponent I played on the day. And yeah, it's just how it goes sometimes. So I was okay with it. I ended with 42 points. That's actually the worst that you can end in Atlanta. So 42 points is 1 point off of a Let It Go promo. You can't get 1 point. You couldn't with that kind of record. So it's not realistic, but it was also one game, not a match. It was one game off of day 2. So yeah, 42 is not ideal, but that's how the tournaments go. Tournaments are designed to create losers. I mean, you have a 3% cut, so 97% of people are going to have some sort of issue. So it's all good. It doesn't really bother me. Yeah, I mentioned some of my hopes for the future. Really, the tournament software, like we could have gotten through a lot more rounds, and yeah, there's no way they walked away from that experience being like, this is optimal. So I'm sure that they're doing things to try to fix that. Hopefully they can fix it by Chicago. My final opinion on 2Game is that I didn't enjoy it, but I'm willing to keep an open mind if the number of rounds are increased. So I don't think I had enough of a sample size and enough of an experience to actually be like 2Game is worse than 3Game or something like that. The sentiment around me was generally negative, but I think there can be a lot of results bias-based opinions because 97% of players are getting owned by the system on day 1. So there's like, I mean, sure, a lot of people are going to be salty about it because most of them are not making day 2, and that's just how it is. One thing I did notice, it's like it didn't really feel like I was able to beat my opponent. Like it didn't. I always felt like I was wanting that third game. It felt like when I was going into a match, I was just trying to juice them for as many points as possible to sort of rack up this macro score in order to try to make it day 2, which is fine. But I feel like I'm wired as a card game player to be like, okay, I'm playing against this opponent. It just like didn't really feel like that sometimes, weirdly enough. But yeah, all of my opponents were super pleasant except for one. I had one that did something that was a little bit nasty to me that I don't like. Basically, they had missed their draw on their turn. They were going. It is a mandatory trigger. I didn't see it at the time. But then we were on my turn. I was questing. They just drew the card. They actually tried to sneak it. They did it really quickly. I didn't call a judge because no advantage was gains, but it was, in my opinion, a very bad manner. And that was the only thing that kind of irritated me. I had other opponents make critical mistakes. They could have resulted in game losses, but I did not call judges at that time. I was like pretty down. Like at the time, like after I 002'd, I faced some very new opponents, and I was just like, I'm not gonna win off of my opponent actually picking up their ink or whatever. I was just kind of out of it at that point. But overall, really good experience. I loved it. Savjz, you have anything to add on to that?
No, not to that really. Like I could talk a little bit about like my experience, I suppose, like just about my deck and stuff.
Yeah, you played
I went with
red,
the
right? Yeah.
I did. I went with the Ruby Sapphire. Like it's been good to me all season, and I had it in my mind going into the event, and I think that Steel Songs would be a better pick. But then at the end of the day, I wasn't like really able to practice it, and I haven't played it in a while, and I had hundreds of more games on Ruby Sapphire. So it was kind of like a comfort pick, and like how can I go wrong with something that I've done so well with? I don't think it was the best pick though. I've slightly this is another learning experience. I've been really like every event that I play, whether it's online or in person, like set championships or this kind of event. I'm always like. There's like really big takeaways, and I have to say that the Ruby Sapphire, like there's some issues there. like I've warmed up to them, even though I've been against like Ruby Amethyst in the past a little bit more. Like I'm definitely like kind of soften my stance on that because I've seen more of those in this best of 2 format where you like something happens with the uninkables and like the consistency when you play your deck where it's just like your top deck could be a one champ or it could be a Tamatoa, in later on. So it's just like it's not the same level as maybe like Ruby Amethyst. Ruby Amethyst can be. So I had a couple of hiccups. My tournament started strong. After 5 rounds, I was at 8 wins. I had like 3 2-0s and 2 1-1s. My losses were, one was to like a Ruby that just I couldn't take out the Queen's Castle anyhow. I just didn't get an answer. And the other one was to a Mufasa deck where a lot of things went wrong, but like one of them was like Chernobog from it, and I had like Scar in my hand. It doesn't really deal with the 9/9. After that though, things took like a pretty bad turn in the event. And I got I thought I was ready for the green steel, but I guess I was like a 2-0 by a green steel, and that would mean like a pretty bad spot at that point. I still like mostly wins, and unfortunately it was like I got some like ties. I think it was like a Ruby Amethyst, another Ruby Amethyst. I just got like a 1-1, and going to the last match, I was playing for the Let It Go promo. I knew that if I got 2-0, I would get it. I played against like this again young guy. He won game 1. Again, Ruby Amethyst. Like, what is it with this Ruby Amethyst? I think I didn't like get 2-0 by any Ruby Amethyst, but clearly like they were able to take more games from me than I was like anticipated. But anyway, he went up 1-0, and I was fully aware of the situation. Like it was, I don't know, maybe kid sounds disrespectful. He was clearly like a lot like younger than I am. Like it's just like, and I just like I kind of wanted to go to the hotel anyway, so I was just like, okay, like we didn't agree upon beforehand. We didn't like. You do realize that, like, whoever wins game 1 is, like, is the only one who can win the promise. There's nothing shady, nothing like, none of that happened. And I think it's actually allowed too, because I think Richelle, I think it was kind of like clarified that you can agree to, like, forfeit a game and stuff. So,
you can
like,
say,
there was no agreement.
Something. I had it clarified to me by a judge for someone asked at the table next to me. They said that you can say, we play game 1. You can say, if we play game 1, I lose, I will concede. That's basically the sentiment.
So I guess it could have been allowed. Maybe I should have. I don't know. Anyway, so I was just like, okay, like enjoy the Let It Go. It was just like cool. Like I knew he would also make like day 2, but he got the promo and made it close. I mean, this is like I learned so much from this event. Honestly, like just like when it comes to deck building, we talked with Moyen a little bit, like going into these challenge events, and like kind of the key theme that we both I think agreed on. Was that consistency is like super important. It's like whatever we play, like whether it's like what I went with was a Ruby Sapphire, and I think you ended up playing was it the Cream Purple? But anyway, like the consistency and just like having like that game plan that's gonna be like very like regularly, like it's just like that is absolutely key. So what I did was to my list was like I cut even further like on the uninkables. So that was like the one preparation I did. Like I went out like 2 scars, but I still feel like the Ruby Sapphire, like I might have been wrong about it when I said that it's a good deck in a best of 2, because I was thinking like, okay, Mana Ramp lets you like break the first player advantage, but it doesn't necessarily work exactly like that, and it's more like the best of 3 allows you to get away with one bad draw type of thing. So Ruby Sapphire, I might have to come up with something else for the next best of 2 or 2 game format event potentially. That's it.
I have a question.
I enjoyed the event.
for the just for the panel now with sort of 2020 hindsight, would any of you, if you had to run back to tournament next week, set 3 metagame, would any of you change your pick? I'm gonna start with you, Colin.
No, I wouldn't have changed my pick. I think maybe why? Oh
no, I thought you were done, so I was like, oh, go over to
no. You can, I'll just say no. I would have stuck.
Yeah.
For me, if it's in Lille with this French Bucky discard purple steel meta, I'm probably changing. Other than that, I think I was very fine with it.
Yeah, Savjz.
I would go with the steel song. I would have went with the steel song. I didn't play a single like Ruby Sapphire Mirror. I don't know if that was just like RNG. The matchup spread that I had, that I experienced was worked super balanced. Like I played like one of each except the Ruby Amethyst. And that's the other deck that I'm like just really comfortable with, and I think it's a really consistent deck. It's like it's one of the 2 decks where I'm just like consistently above 70% win rate. I just even blue steel, as much as I like it, I can't get above 70. So I just go with numbers, and I think it would have been a better pick. I think it's a little bit more consistent, although the deck is heavily reliant on New World, so that could sometimes kind of backfire. But still,
I would run back Ruby Amethyst. I actually played a lot of mirrors, which is very good for me. I was able to all those.
It's the best matchup.
Yeah, it's the best. You can't say that.
That doesn't mean that.
That'll piss
that doesn't mean the
people
deck's bad, but it's a great matchup for us.
It is a good matchup.
I need to start learning it because that's one of those decks that just like when I started playing, it was the most popular thing. It's not exactly my style because I've always enjoyed kind of like the control style, but I've learned to respect it a lot. Like it's a good deck. Like I never said it's a bad deck, but I thought it's kind of mid or tier 2. But now I'm just like, okay, like there's something there. Like, and but I haven't put in the hours. So for me, if like Brenda's question, like if I would play a set 3 event, like I would not play that, but it would definitely, like if I had the time to put in the hours to kind of get good at it, it would be definitely like on my radar as an option. But I need to get to work because I played probably 10 games total or something.
Yeah,
it's dead now. So
a lot of
true.
players, I feel like they had the luxury of they not really having a headache about deck choice because they played one deck a lot and that's all they played. But I played like 100 games of a lot of different decks, so I felt like comfortable enough on a lot of different decks, which gave me much more of a headache in actually choosing the deck that I was going to bring in the end. But still, regarding what you were saying before, there was a bunch of thoughts that were coming up to my head that I was contemplating talking about or not. One is the best of 2 versus best of 3 in deck choice, where I think it like almost doesn't impact it at all. I don't think like because sometimes Ruby Sapphire bricks, I don't think that makes it a worse pick for best of 2 necessarily, because I think in terms of EV, all you really care about is like what win percentage would you give yourself against like a player of this field on the expected matchups. And it doesn't really matter how you win those games, if you win them by like consistently doing something that's like middling powerful or a lot of the time doing something very powerful, but sometimes picking it. I think none of that really matters. It's like more about just getting those win rates up. That being said, if you think like the field that you're going into isn't super strong, you might say, okay, maybe a consistent deck can like get more EV because you don't need to do something extremely powerful to beat maybe a little bit weaker of a field.
It's mostly like what I just add on that, like I know what I mean by that, I suppose, is that with the consistency issues is that like there were several matches where I feel like, okay, I would have won, but there was a Ruby Amethyst match that I lost, but it was like I didn't get a dime. Oh my goodness. And then there was a Emerald Steel match that were like I didn't get a prep at all. Like all 4 preps were in the bottom half of the deck, and then like another match which is like, you know, the uninkability, like that's one of the decks with the highest uninkable counts. So there's a lot of these things when you're playing sort of a reactive strategy where like in particular matchup you need a particular card, and I just feel like if I'm playing against a player of like lower skill level, I feel like having like some like proactive strategy might be more powerful than like playing a reactive strategy where you need a particular card.
Yes. So what I was trying to argue was basically that I think having more consistent deck against weaker field, very reasonable. But I don't think it's really because of best of 2, best of 3. I think that's not good. Really the point.
Yeah.
I think that's a good point. Yeah.
That's
also. Yeah,
there you go. I was just going to say it's a shared opinion Moin and I have in regards to best of 2, because we had a lot of comments on our YouTube videos where like people would say, obviously this kind of deck is better for best of 2, or obviously this strategy is better. And our general sort of thought is that none of it's actually obvious, because it seems like there's probably no advantage to either deck. Like, and you can't make an objective decision, right? Like, there's pros and cons to sort of both sides of it, and I don't think that there is anything that is obvious about 2-game format versus 3-game format when it comes to deck choice. I think that I would, if I'm ranking like the factors that are making me pick a deck, I'm choosing power and metagame far before I'm considering the actual format there.
The only mathematical advantage comes into play because of the extra point for going to 0, where you would prefer to have a deck that goes like 50% going first or second, just as a concept, instead of having a deck that goes 60 going first, 40 going second, because like math-wise, that will be less likely to 0, but that's like a very minor thing. And the other... Yeah?
Go ahead.
The other thing that was driving me crazy was like the... I really don't like all the deals people are making to get people to get more prices. I know you didn't make any deal, but because we are also saying, okay, technically I could say if I lose, I will concede. But like, it still doesn't feel right to me, because I think you're also not allowed to ask like, if you lose, can you concede game
Yeah, you
two?
cannot.
Right?
You cannot do that.
Yeah.
Yes.
So it's like kind of trying to get this deal by not asking, but like asking by not asking. So I feel like it's still kind of gaming the system instead of playing the game.
Yeah.
And
Definitely
also,
agree, yeah.
also the other thing is when I talked, a lot of people do not share my opinion, and I respect that. But a lot of people would say something like, but if I have nothing to win, why wouldn't I concede? It's nice to my opponent. Like they get the card for free. And maybe the next time if I face them, maybe they will concede to me, and then I get like, so everything is good for everyone. But I think that's just totally not the case. It's everything that you're doing is like you're technically taking the promo from someone that you will never see in your life, that doesn't know that you took it away from them by conceding, and you're giving it to someone that you know. And now you're gaining like social credits, so maybe they concede to you in the future. And that doesn't have to be the intent, but I feel like there's no point really in doing so.
Well, I think that is the intent. It is the intent. It's just very human. So this is.
Yeah.
I know.
I really want to add to that.
Go ahead.
Because it was just like I was gonna mention that it was like for the Lerico promo. So the situation was in this particular instance, by the way, was because the Lerico promos, like I knew that it goes beyond like beyond 128. Like everyone who's tied for the point amount. So in this instance, like even though there was no agreement made, but if there was an agreement made, like that, and that happened, it would not take a promo away from anyone else. So in this instance, but I totally get what your point is still valid, and like this type of like questionable deals could be made for like Top Cut as well. Like it fully applies there. But yeah.
So
that makes sense. I forgot about top 128 just extending.
Yeah, I understand the sentiment. And it's actually funny how relevant it is because Flesh and Blood just changed their concession rules. They're already very strict, but they made them even more strict. And often what happens with strict concession rules and strict deal making rules is that you're still your top end, your outlier players, your competitive players, your hyper competitive players will know how to break the rules in the correct way. They'll know how to navigate the rules and how to say the correct things. And when you make concession rules more and more strict, what you often find is that players who don't know what they're doing, ignorant players or players that are there for the first time, will actually make mistakes, often trying to be benign or not doing anything sketchy at all, but they'll say the wrong things, and it can lead to some very unfortunate situations with insta DQs, by the way. So it happened at Flesh and Blood Worlds. The ace seed actually got DQ'd because they were going into the top 8 and they were put on feature match, and he phrased the split question incorrectly. It was a very benign question, phrased it incorrectly, insta DQ'd. And Flesh and Blood just made those stronger. So while I understand the sentiment, I do think that players will always behave in this way. I'm not saying it's helpless and you can't do anything about it. And there's certainly an extreme where the politics of it become very unpleasant and you play the game outside the game, which is not the ideal. But when you add more rules, it doesn't actually stop people often from trying to break the rules. It just makes the outliers break the rules in a more intelligent way, and it punishes the people that are more ignorant. So
yeah, but I mean, so right now, I think if you don't forbid this at all, it's just like everyone.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. It's like so many people get punished for actually playing the game. And I think I like taking the effort in trying to manage it, even if it means some scumbags will still try find a way to get around that. Also, my final match was also a game where the winner, actually in the end it was 1 point below that, but at that point we thought the winner probably gets the let it go if someone goes to 0.
That was mine
too. In every table around me, people where a lot of people were trying to make that deal where someone wins to 0 instead of them tying or something like that. So at the table behind me, they rolled the die to determine it, and then the judge realized it, and I think they said like they should technically DQ them, but then in the end they didn't, because like they said okay, they didn't know that it's not allowed or something like that. On my game it was I win game 1, they win game 2, and then they're like, okay, but I have this proposal. We roll the die, winner of the die will just gets the 2-0, and then they have to let it go. And what was the most outrageous, but at the same time funny thing in the world was, I tell them, no, we cannot do this. It's not allowed. I think maybe next time, because I mean, if people are trying to game the system, maybe I just insta call the judge if anyone asks me something like this, because I really can't stand it. But I say, okay, it's not allowed, so I don't want to do it. And then he was like, no, it's allowed. I can call the judge. And then they called the judge to ask whether they can roll the die. And the judge was
that is correct.
Also found it very funny.
You should call the judge if you are trying to do anything like that, by the way. The judges won't DQ you for asking them. Yeah, definitely do that.
It was very, very, very funny to
Yeah.
call the judge for that.
Yeah. It's a weird topic because I think it's morally ambiguous, and I know some people are on one side or the other, and they like say this is morally wrong or morally right. I think whatever you think it is, it doesn't actually affect like the outside players' behavior, and people will behave in that way, and try to game the system because it is like. Morality aside, like it is just plus EV in that situation. The only reason I don't do it
to cheat.
Yeah, the only reason I don't do it is not because of the moral side. It's because I play these games to try to feel something. I really do. And when there's no stakes, I get like it's just like it takes away my reason for playing. Maybe if my stakes ever increase like 50 to 100K, where it's like actually relevant money to me, or like a life changing amount of money, maybe that would change my stance. But like right now, when I go into the last round and I know I'm playing for nothing or something, I actually start to sweat a little bit, and that's like a rare feeling for me, and I really enjoy that.
It's pretty huge, like just to let it go. So like $2,000, like people are selling them. Like so I heard like someone mention 1750 just like on the spot, and like it's just like when you think about it, it's just going from like 0 to 2,000, and like if there is even if it's like that's a lot of money. Like those are pretty big prizes, honestly.
Yeah. It's just I know that's not what you're saying, but like the amount of prize money doesn't suddenly make wrong practices right. If just
that's not. Yeah,
but at the same time, it's I can understand that making a shady deal like this to maybe secure 2K for a player, like it's hard to pass up on. But I
also think that wrong is subjective, even if you disagree with it. Like as much as you can think it's objective, it's just not. Like some people just disagree with that, And that's
a lot of people disagree with me.
Most people. Let's be real. Most people.
I'm aware.
Yeah. So I actually don't fault them, even though I don't engage in the practice myself. But that's just kind of an approach I have. Anyway, there's a last thing I want to say. Lots of people came and said hi. I think that probably applies for everybody here. We do appreciate that. If you see us in an event in the future, don't be shy. It definitely makes the event a lot better for us. If you can't find me, just look for the smallest person in the room. You'll find me. Just you looking around. I don't know if Savjz is in on that. Is in on that inside joke, but yeah, a lot of people made jokes about that this weekend, which is pretty funny. And my last thing is,
what was that? You gotta explain it.
Yeah, so basically, I was at a Flesh and Blood event, and I was with one of my friends who's like very well known, Team Covenant. His name is Zach Bunn. They're just like a big streamer, big distributor for games, so he gets recognized a lot. Anyway, we're walking out. Some guy's like, "Oh, Zach, I love your content, like all this stuff, normal." And he goes, and then Riley's about to go, "Brendan." I was like, "Yeah." He's like, "You're smaller than I expected," and he just walked away. 100% not kidding. No comedic effect. Never cashed back in on like the joke or anything. He just walked away, and we thought that was the funniest shit ever. So. Yeah, so now, yeah, it's like a running joke. The last thing I want to say is please no lunch break. They did a lunch break after round 3 for us, a 3-hour lunch, or a 1-hour lunch break after round 3. That is abnormal. And considering like all the delays we're having, I would prefer if we did not have that in the future. I don't know if you guys had a lunch break as well. Did you and Lille?
I think we did, but it all blended into the fucking delay.
I don't even remember.
Did you guys have air conditioning?
But I also don't like breaks.
Did you guys have air conditioning?
Yeah, when I sat down at first, I thought it was cold, but then people started sweating in the venue, so obviously,
yeah, because I've been to that venue and I was cooking. Holy shit!
No, it wasn't like abnormally warm, so it was fine.
Okay.
Before, do you mind just before we move on to the Set 4 stuff? I do want to tell one quick story.
Sure.
I was telling everyone at the event in Lille, but it's the most I've ever been scammed in Disney Lorcana. And I say scammed because I faced a Jafar deck, and oh my word. I don't think anyone can be beat by Jafar the way I was beat by this man.
Did you see Moyne's stream match by chance against Zephyr? Zephyr
was playing Zephyr scam Moyen?
Oh yeah, bro. Like turn forward him on Jafar or something.
Yeah, it was like it was the shift and then shift Jafar on 5 and then double Holy Word.
Yeah.
Exactly. It was turn 5 $20.
Yeah. So basically, it was 1-0 to me. Absolutely stomping. Like it's turn 7. They play Jafar, and then my turn. I can quest up to 19. I have a goat in hand. I'm like, okay, just I know they're on like 7 lore. I'm like, okay, I know if you get your whole new world and into your second whole new world, you win. So he draws his card. He's got 3 cards in hand. He sings A Whole New World. He shows me 2 other Whole New Worlds in his hand. So I'm like, okay, like the odds you get your last Whole New World is pretty much, it looks good to me. Looks good, right? Like there's like 30 plus cards in your deck still. And then he goes, okay, like the only way I win is if I get the Whole New World. So I'm going to reveal them one by one. I'm like, fuck, okay. So he goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And it was the 7th card. And then literally, I mean, I would have freaked out as well, but like, oh my God, started going absolutely crazy. My face, oh my God, like, fuck it. Like, I'm like, okay, yeah, that's how that's, and those 4 points I would have made, I would have at least got the promo, but yeah. Happens as card games, right? I just couldn't believe it. I actually couldn't believe it, like, crazy.
My 2 favorite moments was one in the very first round where I double dialed an opponent to raise a purple steel game, and then they were over 10 lore already, and then they go back to 0 in that same game.
There's a picture of you holding your lore sheet where it says like they're on 10 and then the coins.
So that was so very funny. And then there was another game against Purple Steel in the end where they had so much board and had so much weird trades to decide. And I think in the end they decided on all the correct trades where they could already dump the hand next turn in a way where my Murfolk would be useless. And in that turn I had 3 crab triggers and I used 2 of them on my Merfolk to trade into an entire Warren Hood. So that was a very cool game.
Yeah. Well, we say goodbye to set 3 meta. The event winners was Amber Steel in Lille, and it was Amber Amethyst in Atlanta.
What were you guys cooking in America? Oh my God.
Yeah. We had so we put out a metagame video, Moyne and I know Moyne hasn't checked the comments, but there were some people that came back to let us know that we maybe put that deck in C tier.
It's still C tier.
It's still C tier. I know, it's just so funny. I was just like, I open up YouTube and I go to the notifications like, of course. I mean, we're coming back to like, it was one copy in the top 16 as well. But yeah, it was a pretty funky list, to be honest. It had Mufasa, it had the Fairy Godmothers.
One was Cinderella with no songs.
Yeah, no songs.
It's like, what is happening? It was just to like enable one of the, I think there was some kind of synergy with that. Yeah, with the Fairy Godmother. It was like when you play a Cinderella, like you exert something from your opponent. I think
it's the 3-cost Pinocchio that's actually inkable, but you need to hold a card for it to work.
Yeah, but that's a very good stat line, and both of them are inkable. So that part of the deck had me intrigued.
Yeah. I will, I'll take credit. I did find a message from May 5th, Cinco de Mayo, where I messaged more and I said, I think Amber Amethyst is the truth. I posted on the Discord and people like, why didn't you talk about it on the pod? I was like, because I tried it and I got owned. It did not work.
I don't know. Spessy also always says that, I told you this was going to be good, but he tells me like 20 color combinations are going to be good. And then, of course, one of them is going to do something.
Yeah, it's absolutely wild that won the tournament. All of you should look at it as a good thing that a rogue deck, and that it was a rogue deck, can take down a big tournament like that, a massive tournament.
It was great. The morning on Monday after the winner won Atlanta, like all of my Fairy Godmothers on Card Market instantly sold. It was amazing. They were sitting there, never being touched, and then they were all gone.
Yeah, I think Perdita is pumping, even though it is completely unplayable. It's at 4.
It's crazy. Yeah, it's like everyone's like, oh, I'm gonna buy Perdita. It's like Sisu. Brawl, especially the small Sisu, right? It shits on that card.
Yeah. So, that deck got its final bang in the finals, that's cool. Top 8 EV was disgusting, by the way. It was 30 to 50K. Like, it's insane.
Wow.
Yeah. Crazy.
Yeah, it's the Dallas selling out the moment, like people hear about it.
Yes.
It's just like when the card prices are out, it's just like, okay, like Dallas, like, I don't know. I wouldn't say that the ticket sale started slow. We don't know how many tickets were immediately sold, but it had like that, like the fire symbols and like tickets are selling fast, but it was not sold out. Then this event happens, the Golden Mickeys, what are they going for? 30,000, 50,000? I don't even know.
I think
like
30
it's just like
30 minimum.
It's just like what? And one of these events is every month, so it's gonna be like, I suppose, technically, like the smaller events, the 1024 events are going to have only half the prices. So it's going to be like just 300K instead of 600K.
Why do you think that? Why do you think it'll be half the prices?
It is because like it was 4 serialized Mickeys was the original.
Oh, I didn't know they expanded.
What it's supposed to be.
That's
so
super
the
good.
way it works is it was like, so for events with what's the cutoff? It's anyway like it's like at least 1025. So when it's like higher than the one 1024, like any event, then the prices double, and like the Mickeys go from 4 to 8, and every other price also gets doubled. So Dallas is going to have the same prices as this one, but Chicago is only going to have half the players and half the prices. But chances to win are the same.
Qualifications are the same too, right? So top 16 to qual in Chicago, I assume, for nationals or whatever.
I don't know.
Yeah, that's good. It's good to hear though. I was actually really disappointed.
Yeah.
I was like, damn, I didn't get into Chicago, and it's going to be relatively to ATL so free because it was half the people. But that's good to hear that.
I also don't know if it's like I don't remember from the top of my head. I'm sure it's announced. Like if you just looked up at it. But like, is the Chicago Swiss cutoff going to be 64 or 32? I wonder that's pretty interesting because they could do the 64, but it's only half the players.
No idea.
Yeah, I don't know.
That. So, surely someone let us in the comments.
I think it's interesting that Chicago sold fast because that's pretty soon, but that Fort Worth is already sold out. We don't have tickets for Bochum yet. Like they said, after Lille, like you guys will have tickets. So
and it still says after Lille.
Mm-hmm. So interesting.
Yep. All right. Well, let's hit our spill dig section really quickly. This is our listener question section. We get your question read on next week's podcast. Shoot us a comment on YouTube. We'll get it queued up. All right, over to you, Kawa.
First one's from White Widow. To touch on the blue-red counters to Diablo, I feel Ice Block Little Sisu is way better to go than Brawl. This line also allows big early Sisu to handle a board of Bucky and Ursula, etc.
Yeah.
It seems like a better way to go, but you don't always have those two cards, right? So maybe you need the Brawl.
What's Savjz's opinion on Brawl?
I think the card is like kind of bad, but it's one of those cards that might be just like, it might be necessary. Like it might feel like this void where you just like you have to be able to deal with like Diablo. You just kind of get rid of it. And as much as like it would be better to have the Ice Block and the Sisu, like both the Trigos Sisu, like both the Ice Block and the Trigos Sisu are uninkable. And like I'm not sure you can't just play like 4 Ice Blocks and 4 Sisus. And even if you played 4, like you wouldn't probably draw them at the same time. So like I'm not a big like Brawl enthusiast, but I mean it is inkable, and it's just like in certain meta, I think that it might have enough targets to be worth playing.
So I started playing Set 4 yesterday, and I've been playing a lot. I'm almost back on rank 1, but I still need a few more games. And today was the day where I played lots of Red Blue, and I also recorded a video with Spessy on it today, where I also think it's like Brawl is not it's not core to the deck's game plan. It's not so good that you have to play it, but right now we have this meta that's very focused around the Sapphire decks, but also around Diablo and Emerald. So I think right now I would just love to have these 4 inkable copies of Diablo answers in my deck, but they don't need to be in there. But at the same time, when playing today, it also helped a lot to be able to. So Robin Hood is not an issue for this deck because you can Medusa it, but when they shift it, it can be nice to Ice Block Brawl the Robin Hood.
That's true. Ice Block definitely adds value to it. What do you think is the right amount of Ice Blocks in Ruby Sapphire?
4.
Really? Do you got other uninkables? What uninkables do you got for it?
So the list that I'm playing right now is cutting a few good uninkables, and it's still in testing. But right now I've really been liking 4 Ice Block, 4 of the big Sisu, but then no of the small Sisus, no Be Prepared.
Okay.
How do you feel about Scuttle? That's
that's
like an outlier on your list. Is I see Scuttles like make it in some lists and don't make it into others.
Me or Savjz?
You have 2 Scuttles in your
because
list.
I think Savjz also has 2. So
okay.
At least on Team 1 you had.
No, Scuttle.
No, the Scuttle.
2 costs, fetch an item.
For me, it's one of the last cards I added into
Scuttles.
the deck.
Yeah. I think it's pretty good. Like people say that like sometimes I hear comments that like it's bad like because like you don't hit it always, but you don't really need to hit it that often. I feel like you hit it often enough. Like it's just a solid like cantrip kind of like, and like in some matchups you need to get that dime. Like it's just like so integral. I feel like having two of those instead of like Queen of Hearts, it's pretty legit.
Yeah.
So to me also, with no Queen of Hearts, it can hurt to not be able to play any character onto the board in the first 2 turns. So having something can be nice in case you're playing against like a Merfolk deck, for example, just to be able to challenge some early quests.
Like if you don't need to rush from Queen of Hearts, and you need to have something at 2, and I think it's the best choice, even if it's not perfect. If you don't need to rush for Queen of Hearts, I think it's better than Queen of Hearts, and like what else would it be? It's just there's nothing really. Like I can't think of much two drops other than that.
And on top of that, I think if you just evaluate the card on 2 cost 1/3, like in a vacuum that's draws a card like this % of the time, and this % of the time it doesn't hit. I actually think it's not that good, but then when you consider, I don't have that many plays on 2, it can find the quill for 3, which is very important. And in a lot of matchups, it just increases your consistency of finding dime for those matchups. So I think when you combine all of that together, I think the card's pretty decent.
That's a really good point, because like quill can be such an important card, and it curves out it perfectly. It's like you just get four cards to look for the quill. Like if you don't have it, that's absolutely true. Like it's just a really, really nice curve.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, makes sense. All right, next comment is from Null. I read the entire comprehensive rules and tournament rules at Moyne. I don't see anywhere where it says you can only cut the opponent's deck once. I believe it says you can cut and or shuffle it. Yeah, I had opponents shuffle my deck. I think it was fine.
Yeah, Moyne had someone shuffle his deck upside down.
So they're saying it wasn't them, but I don't see how it could have been me. And after one of my opponents shuffled my deck, half of my cards were upside down. I was like, oh yeah, okay, so I have to fix this now. Took some time and was annoying. And like there's always the fear of an opponent doing something like this and then calling the judge because your sleeves are upside down.
Yeah. Next one's from Luce. Referring to the lore count in my set championship, there was a point where my opponent and I had different records about his lore count, both on paper. And I'm pretty sure that I had it correct. There was no way he could have 3 more lore than I wrote down, but the judge ruled in his favor because it was not 100% possible to prove either way. In the end, the process took so long that we tied and I missed top 8 because of it. So record your lore count on paper, even if it didn't work in my favor this time. Using dice is even worse. Yeah.
Did you guys have anybody not use paper against you?
No. I had people that had paper that weren't recording, that every time they didn't, I was like, please record. If I did something or if they did something, I was like, and the people that like if I played Go, that they just sit there, I'm like, can you please track? I think it's important that we both maintain it, right? Because then if they're behind or whatever, then that's how shit gets messed up, right?
Yeah, like me at X, you at Y. You didn't have any dice gamers though? Nobody had counting lore on dice gamers?
I didn't have a dice gamer, but I did like so I had a couple. I think it was like probably 2, at least one. I think it was like 2 who had like one of those like magic boards, where you have like the magic pen and you can like erase and stuff. But it would leave there, you can track the lore and stuff. And like after the game, they would like reset it and then just like use it again. Like yeah. I don't know what they are called exactly, but you know what I mean, I guess.
Boogie boards.
Boogie boards, yeah.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah. So the next one's from Anthony. Can we talk more about how 2-game format now? Why is a 3-0-5 record in Atlanta now better than 5-3? Seeing such draw-heavy records, but up in the standings is completely foreign to me, coming from other competitive card games where we are saying and use best of 3. Am I crazy here, or what does Podcana think? I mean, I think you talked about it a lot, Brennan, right? Your opinion on the format.
Well, it's hard for me to give an opinion on the format. I had 6 2-0s and 3 0-2s. That's basically 3-game format. I played 3-game format. I had no draws, so I don't know. I have to wait to give my opinion. I will say though, I did encounter people that were drawing a lot, and they were having a pretty shit time. Like they were not super happy because they were far.
My wife was one of them.
Yep.
My wife was like, she was like in like, what did she call it? It was like in a split hell or something. I forgot the exact wording, but like she got like 4 splits in a row and just like no, she was so frustrated about it.
Yeah, I also met in Lille, I met Erlmeister, and he was already envisioning this video title in his head where he's like, oh, undefeated at Lille, and his record was like 1 win, 8 ties.
Oh my god. That's funny.
And the next one is Jeremy. What deck would you suggest is the worst matchup for Ruby Sapphire? It has so many answers to so many decks now. Probably still the same as what it was. Would you say initially it's still the discard decks for the moment at Sapphire?
Yeah, so the discard decks are the only decks that I had close matchups against. So far.
Everything else was really easy to beat, basically.
Yeah, I mean, it crept a bit in power, right? So, yeah, it's an interesting spot.
The thing is, the Sapphire Steel matchup might be not as good as it was before because they don't have to play for board. They can just like play their own solitaire game plan and set up items for crab dime.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. For sure.
And I don't know if I'm going to read this comment.
This one's not bad.
Brandon.
I like this one because it actually brings it back to another core concept that I want to talk about.
Okay. Well, yeah, the only reason I wasn't going to read it out because I think at the very end you made a pretty nice statement about this. But
Yes,
we
we should
anyways.
read that first, by the way.
Oh, you can read this comment. Go for it.
Are going to try to get Fred Carson, winner of Lille, to come on the podcast and do the fucking math on 60 cards. So you guys can stop asking about that shit. And we could be wrong. To be honest, I was just being funny when I was talking down so much right there. But I want to get Frank on. So Frank is a very famous Magic quant. He does a lot of the math behind Magic the Gathering. Extremely prolific player. Probably one of the most impactful TCG theorists of all time. I'm going to try to reach out to him to get him to come onto the podcast to settle the debate on 60 cards. But yeah. This comment anyway says from Groove, hi guys, love watching the podcast each week. Need to add more fire to not to add more fire to the 60 card deck debate, but I have a question for you. If you always play 60 cards, do you always play 15 cards at 4 copies each in your deck? If the answer is no, how do you justify the hit to consistency for playing anything over 15 cards in the deck? Is it possible for a 61 plus card deck to be more consistent than a 60 card deck? A simple example would be a deck of 20 cards at 3 copies each, 60 total. Should be less consistent than a deck of 16 cards at 4 copies each, 64 total. This is just based on the percentage chance to draw a given card at 5% versus 6.25%. That being said, I generally run 60 cards in my deck, but I wouldn't discredit a list over 60 cards as the same as I would discredit a list not running 15x4 cards. 15x4 is interesting. So the reason I bring this up is not in regards to the 60 plus cards, because there's something going on there, but in terms of running 4-ofs, I lean towards that side of deck building. Like when I see a deck that is all is composed of a lot of 2-ofs, 1-ofs, 3-ofs, and no 4-ofs, I get a little bit sick. I really do. It hurts me. It hurts me deeply. But at the same time, a lot of these deck building theories behind not playing 4 of a card. So if you see like a 1 of a card, why is somebody playing 1 of? It's often due to they'll have like this other theory that's not actually based on draw percentage. It's slightly based on draw percentage, but they'll add something like, if I draw 2 of these, it's so bad that I lose the game. So that's why they will play like 1 or something like that. And they'll use this like those kind of theories to add, should I play 2? Should I play 3? And usually it's not based off like the specific math percentage, usually based off these like larger kind of more ephemeral concepts, as if I never want 2 in my hand, therefore I play this. I just want to get y'all's thoughts specifically on running 4-ofs, because Savjz, I see a lot of your decks as well. A lot of your decks will have 2-ofs, 3-ofs. Like how do you end up on those numbers?
Well, I play a lot of Ruby Sapphire, so that one in particular has a lot of those searching mechanics. So I play like those 4 copies of How Far I'll Go, like 4 copies of Develop Your Brain, 4 copies of Chromatala. So there's a lot of deck manipulation, and I think that in decks where you are able to go like through it, go a little bit quicker, I think there's more room for playing 1-offs because you have access to them more often. You can like kind of find what you need because you have tools to search. But I guess the biggest reason why oftentimes I play I play less than 4 copies is the ink system, because the uninkables are a real issue. So I have like these kind of like slots of like uninkables, like what are good in this, what are useless cards in the starting hand, for example, and like situational cards, and how bad is it to draw cards at the same time. So for example, if you have let's say you have an uninkable card that's like only good in some situations. When you have 4 copies of the card, there's 6 different like combinations when you have 2 of them in your hand at the same time. But when you got just 1 of them, there's only 3. So you got technically like 50% less times you will like draw 2 at the same time, because there's only 3 combinations of them. But like it's kind of like that kind of stuff. But like usually when I have less than 4 copies of something, it's the uninkable cards, it's the situational cards. I do think that the decks that don't have those like deck manipulation mechanics, where you have any like searching mechanics, I don't think it's as good. But if you're playing on something like decks with New World, for example, I think there could be more like room for that, because you can like find stuff you need. One of the examples of like where I run a 1-off, but it's not an uninkable, is that I have one Judy Hops in my Ruby Sapphire, specifically for flutes. Because what flutes do is that they cast New World, so like I don't necessarily need more. I went back. We didn't talk about this morning. I know we went like away from Judy Hops, but I actually added it back in because flutes. So when flutes start casting New Worlds, every game against the flute deck really like they just like I have my own deck manipulation, but then on top of that they are like drawing me full hands. So oftentimes it's like I have access to that just 1 copy of Judy Hops. In most games, because like 30 cards are seen, 40 cards are seen, and then it's also like it's just like I don't need more than that. So it's really situational. But yeah, uninkables are probably the number one focus. Where you just like it's really hard to run some like 4 copies of the same card if it's not essential for the strategy.
What number of uninkables do you usually kind of tolerate? I know it's deck dependent, but do you have any heuristics?
So this is something that I just like keep like trending kind of like down on it, and I it's just like the more I play the game, I'm just like, okay, like the more I like the inkables. So it's not necessarily because there would be issues with the mana, but I've just noticed this kind of pattern where it's like I'm by having a high amount of uninkables, even if I don't struggle with mana, it's more common that I have to ink a card that I don't want to ink. Like I say, like I'm playing. I might not struggle with my ink when I'm playing a Ruby Sapphire on a like common basis or in the starting hand. But there could be situations where, for example, because of some of the uninkables, 7s in particular, 7s and 6s, Madame Medusas, all that stuff, I'm like kind of forced to inking. Let's say a Hiram that I don't want to ink. So just having kind of like having lots of inkable cards. It's like it might not be obvious immediately, but it actually gives you this flexibility to like kind of like keep your good cards more often. So I've started at higher amounts of uninkables because you're like, I get away with it. Like I still have something to ink every turn, and then I just have kind of better cards. But the more Lorcana I played, I'm just like I try to like play only the uninkables that I have to. That's one of the things where I was so curious to ask Moina about the Ice Block, having played that because that's one of those cards that I freaking love Ice Block. I think it's really awesome, and it feels so good. And like when you combine it with whether it's a small Sisu, big Sisu, Brawl, but that uninkability on that card is just like it's giving me like such a headache because I don't know what other uninkables I would got for it, and then the deck just ends up with a lot of them. So I forgot the question, but uninkable bad.
It's all good.
Uninkable bad.
I have so many thoughts on all of these concepts that I might not be able to articulate well enough. For the ice blocks, I think basically that it's a common knowledge that people know. Your uninkables, you're often forced to play them, so like they actually have to be useful in a lot of situations. So, for example, tech cards, it's a lot more valuable if the tech cards are inkable, but then the uninkables, they need to be cards that are like good in a lot of situations. So because you will need to play them, which is my biggest issue with the 3-cost Sisu, for example, because I think it can come up reasonably often where you don't get a target for the 3-cost Sisu, and then you're just stuck with this uninkable card in your hand, where Ice Block, just plotting it down on the board, can provide value often enough with Flower Shams or the removal pieces, because I'm playing for Brawl as well. But even more importantly, the discussion about four counts and whatnot, because I think this is also one of the things where I deviate from Brandon's opinion probably the most, or Tivi's the most, because I really, I think we've talked about this before, but I really like to see it as an first copy is like the best copy of that card in every game. And like, because in general, a copy of a card is not synergistic with the next copy of that card. There might be exceptions, but usually it's a bad thing to draw multiple copies of the same card as a baseline. There's exceptions to that, of course. And for that reason, if you would rather have different cards in your deck so that or you can decide based on how the game's going or developing and how you're predicting the game to go, you can decide which card to keep in your hand and which card to play in which situation, and then you will get some extra power level out of the card just because you have the white card for the right situation, which is exactly where the inkable theory from Savjz is coming into play, where, okay, you might have enough ink, but having a little bit more ink might mean more flexibility in inking, which might mean you can keep better cards for the right situations. So all of that ties together really nicely. So at the same time, where I don't think a deck should not have four copies of any card. I think that would be weird, but I also generally, I think optimized decks of any deck, they are not usually, I think it doesn't really happen that there are 4 copies of every single card that's in their deck. I think that's often not the right approach either, because there's a lot of value in having more options in your deck. So basically, let's say this is like a construct, but imagine you have all the cards that you want to put in your deck, you have like 60 different cards, and they're all on the exact same power level, and they also function well together.
Yeah.
Like there wouldn't actually be a reason to play multiple copies of any card. I would rather maybe even play 61 of. The only reason that's not the case is because like you can build game plans by drawing cards more consistently, but also some cards are just on a higher power level, and those you will just want to draw as often as possible, and those you will want to have 4 of. But then when you have cards on similar power level, maybe it's better to have a little bit of a split than just have 1 4 times.
Yeah, I think it's a discussion that we had about. I think this is like a fascinating kind of example of that when you talk about just like having like more flexibility. I think the 4 Medusa versus 3 Medusa and a Tremaine, like kind of like when you think about it, and when you think about the situations where you just draw like multiple copies at the same time, like you might get a hand where you have like 3 Medusas, and like Medusa is the better card. I don't think it's anything unclear. The Medusa is the better card, but it's just like if you have 3 Medusa and 1 Tremaine, there's a lot of situations where like having 2 Medusas at the same time would be like just way worse than having 1 Medusa and 1 Tremaine, and then having the flexibility to choose which one fits the situation better.
Yeah, and this is even for an uninkable card. I think it applies even more to inkable cards where the flexibility helps you even more because you can even ink the card that's not going to be good in a certain type of game.
My theory is, and these are working theories as well. This is why this conversation in particular is so interesting, is because there's actually 0% of me that wants to be correct. I just want to find the right fucking answer because it's so complicated. But my theory generally is around that like no cards are actually truly replacement value and of equal power. Like there are cards that are just more powerful than one another, but the margins can be thin enough that it is not ultimately clear. And that's why I like to have more 4-ofs rather than not. It's because I do believe in that deck building theory of wanting to draw certain cards more often than others. What's interesting about that theory, though, is when you break it down into like curve, because you couldn't just put the most powerful cards in your deck, right? You have to have cards at different costs because they impact at different parts of the game. So if all of my most powerful cards would be Anthos or 4 costs, I couldn't just pack my deck worth of 4 costs, right? Like, so the theory cannot be extrapolated like infinitely. Also, when it comes to Medusa versus Tremaine and having the split, I think you're right. But then at the same time, I think you could take this like theoretical math of a metagame in your expected matchups, and then you could sort of extrapolate that to the applicability of Medusa versus Tremaine. Then do this like theoretical math on like how often you encounter the scenario where Tremaine is actually better, and then maybe come down to like basically 2 true values that you can assign to each card, and the Medusa comes out as just like the overwhelmingly better card. So even where you have the scenarios where Tremaine might save you, it's so minute that diluting your deck with the Tremaine ultimately just gives you a worse deck, even though by having only Medusa, you limit your ability to deal with some scenarios. So it's like basically extrapolating all of your games and trying to find the most aggregate, like most smooth, or sort of like most baseline way of understanding anything. That's kind of like where I'm at. I don't know. I totally followed you.
Yeah. I think you hit the nail on the head. So I've been playing like the 4 Medusa, 1 Tremaine, and then that was one of the things that I thought about. But my list for like Atlanta, like I actually had 4 Medusa, 0 Tremaine, just because it was based on the meta. Because Tremaine it's particularly good in like Mirror, and it's good after Be Prepared, and like like that's where it's good. Your opponent might play 1 big thing, they might be like Tamato or whatever. But it's good like against control, and I was very confident going into those matchups. I just felt like slamming a Medusa on turn 4, whether it's with Tramping Twice or with Quill, like playing a Medusa on turn 4 is a game-winning move. There's no world where I'm playing less than 4 Medusa. I just couldn't fit the Tremaine. Like when there's something like, I don't know, like Robin Hood, or whether it's like Ursula Tree or something like that, you can't play a Tremaine. Like they're gonna sacrifice their 2-drop or 1-drop or something. Like, so I did end up going with that, but it's just like I was kind of just bringing it up from like the theory point.
Yeah,
where,
absolutely,
like having the one-off brings that like optionality, and I think in some metas it would make sense.
Yeah, it's all theory. My theory is the core of my theory is that you can assign that theoretically you could assign a true value to each card, and you'd be encompassing every matchup. Basically, you would take what you could theoretically put as an infinite sample size of the metagame, and through that, you can extrapolate a true like value to the card. And even though there are situations where Tremaine is better than Medusa, on the aggregate, due to metagame conditions, Medusa is just the better card. So you will encounter these bad beat scenarios where you don't have the Tremaine, right? And you will absolutely lose a game because of it. But if we just take it as a massive sample size, like Medusa just comes out as the better card. And I don't actually make the trade-off. It's not 3-1, it's just 4 of the Medusa in that scenario. That's the theory, right? It's you absolutely cannot apply it to anything. It's absolutely imperfect, but that's just like the core of the theory.
Yeah, also, now that we've discussed all these very intricate theories, just coming back to the question, I think the question was kind of like misguiding a little bit, not intentionally, but it was like saying, okay, but playing 4-offs is the most consistent, so if you're not playing all 4-offs, then you don't care about consistency, so might as well play more than 60 cards. That's like a little bit what we could read out of those questions. And I think basically I do care a lot about consistency, but just on like, not on all of my cards. I don't need all of my cards to be equally likely to be, and most likely to be drawn. But for example, let's say in Ruby Sapphire, I want the highest possible chance to draw my 1 jump ahead on 2, my Fishbone Quill, maybe for ramp. I want the highest chance to find my Popsicles, so my Flava Charm, my Flava Charm draw engine works. So for that reason, the getting the most consistency for all of these things, and there's a lot more of these. You want 4 of these copies, and you want the minimum amount of cards, which is 60 cards. That doesn't mean that we have to play 4 copies of all the cards that are a lot more niche in their use cases than, let's say, 1 jump ahead in Ruby Sapphire.
Yeah, there's a lot of like extra kind of like benefit for like executing a strategy as a whole, like bringing the consistency to that. If we think about it as an example, like playing 4 small Robin Hoods or playing 4 big Robin Hoods, because it's kind of like the small Robin Hood, I think tends to only really be good for the shift. So like going down, that's an example of a card I feel like where like just going down to 3 Robin Hoods of each would just be like pretty terrible. Like you really want to like, because every small Robin Hood makes your big Robin Hood better, and every big Robin Hood makes your small Robin Hood better. So in that type of situation, it's like extra important. It kind of same applies to some extent, I think, in let's say Popsicles and Hirams. Like obviously you want 4 of each because they play together. But I think the shifts are like an extra good example for like where you really want to have the full copies for consistency.
Yeah.
Also, just deck building theory wise for these ramp decks, I think it's very interesting where you talk about, okay, we want max consistency because we want to force some type of game plan over and over again. For example, we've seen in Sapphire Steel a lot of lists not play 1 jump ahead at all because they have the great Smee on 2, and then they just ramp with Quill or Mickey Mouse. But Mickey Mouse doesn't see any play in Ruby Sapphire, and that doesn't mean Mickey Mouse is a bad card. But in the Ruby Sapphire deck, the way we've built it, we want to ramp on 2. We don't have the Smee to contest board on 2. And then if we've already ramped on 2 with 1 jump ahead, there's not really any good turn for where Mickey Mouse is fast enough. And if you miss the 1 jump ahead, you can't really go Mickey Mouse into Medusa, so you need the Quill anyways. So for these reasons, like both 1 jump ahead and Mickey Mouse are good ramp options, but with increasing our consistency, it allows us to draw certain cards with like 4 copies of them and only 60 cards in deck. We allow ourselves to force a game plan where our game plan is contest board on 1-2, then ramp on 3, or maybe or we can ramp on 2 and then play something for 4 on turn 3 already.
It's so complicated. I think that's why we have so much fun with Lorcana, is because the deck building is, maybe it will be more solved later, but right now it feels very unsolved. It's so complicated.
I think the card pool is actually still really limited though. So there's some of the I feel like a lot of decks might be built correctly without actually being like fully understood like how it should be built. I don't know, that sounds a little like contradicting itself, you know, it's like right, but it's not, it's for the wrong reasons. Yeah, it's just because there aren't that many good options. Like I think the 2-drop situation for like blue steel and like the blue red that we talked about, like just like the Ruby Sapphire. Like Scuttle, is Scuttle good? Well, what else would we play? We gotta play something. We either play Queen of Hearts or we play Scuttle. There's nothing else. Like you go through all the 2 cost, like they're just worse. Yeah. Like is Scuttle the best card ever? No, but it's the best you got, and you gotta play something more than just the 4 jumps.
So I have one counterpoint to that, and I think that my theory is that in Lorcana that the correct deck and the true deck does not actually exist. It's all contextual based. No, it's not all, but a lot of it's contextual based on metagame. Because there's no sideboard, I feel like the deck building is very dynamic, where I don't think we've encountered a deck that is so linear and so powerful that it actually has like a just correct shell. I think that most of these shells are sort of, they ebb and flow based off these expected metagames. Do you agree with that in this game? Savjz?
Yeah. I feel like this is like when I think about that, where like there's like where a perfect shell could be found. I think that some of like Zansai's, like the Amber Steel lists have been like pretty close there with some of the like proactive like playstyles when he was playing like the Queen shifts. Like it's pretty cookie cutter. Like then every card kind of like it's just like there's one clear thing you want to do, which is like, you dump your hand and you sing a whole new world. Your opponent still has a bunch of cards in their hand. I think that one is like there's not that much flexibility on it at the end of the day. Where it's pretty straightforward. You have a plan, and like the cards that are best for it are like pretty clear.
Yeah, but I think for a lot of decks we figured out a big part of the shell that will stay the same. But I think for all of these decks, there's still like 5-ish cards that could totally change based on context. We've had Frank Carsten win with Ember Steel. Suddenly there's 3 piglets in, and then even in that deck, it's like it is the same shell, but then there's do you actually play a Criminal Mind to get rid of Cinderellas? What's the exact count on how many Cinderellas do you play? Because playing 3 Cinderellas doesn't just mean, okay, I think 3 Cinderellas is optimal. Playing 3 Cinderellas means, okay, I'm taking a little bit more towards the steel matchup, so I can shift a little bit more often towards that. They were only playing 2 Flutes. All of that is like, none of that is like, okay, this is the optimal deck. No matter what I face, this is like, all of this is okay. If I expect to face this a little bit more, maybe I change 1 or 2 cards here.
Yeah. I think that's why we end up deck building for so long. And that it feels like, as we butt up against the next set, and even in set 3, as the next set had released, we're still deck building because there is just not, like, for the most part, there aren't optimal lists. Like they're dynamic based off the expected metagame. Yeah, I mean, that was a good question. So yeah, that was a good question. Yeah, we think about it a lot, to be honest. We really do. And that's what makes this game so fun. Anyway, if you want to get your question read out in next week's podcast, shoot us a comment on YouTube. We'll get it queued up. Let's look forward to the set 4 metagame. Let's talk about big players. If you could sum up the set 4 metagame, what do you think what is the dynamic of the tier 1 decks? Like, what are the tier 1 decks and what is the dynamic between them? Either of you can take it.
You want to go first?
Me? I mean, I'm like 1.5 days into the set, so I could try, but I might be a bit off.
I've barely played any, so I think Savjz is probably the best person to talk to.
So I haven't played that much either. Honestly, I've played some. Like when the set first came out, I did play a bunch, but I think Diablo is right now. It's the driving force. Like you play Diablo or you deal with Diablo. That has to be a consideration. Like I think the card looks really good, but like the more I play with it, the more it's just like it shows so much potential. And even decks that have ways to remove it, it's just like they might not have it in the hand. And if they don't have it, then that's it. And just when you combine Diablo with discard mechanics, let's say the 2-cost Ursula, 2-ink Ursula is absolutely fantastic auto include in every green deck. It goes so well with the Diablo. You always have some discard, but not only that, it doesn't just discard the card, but you also gain the information from the 2-cost Ursula whether your Diablo will be able to get away or not. Like sometimes there's situations where you play an Ursula on 2 and then you just you have a Diablo and you have a different 3-drop, and then you look at it, they don't have a way to deal with the Diablo, I'm gonna play that and just win the game. Or they can deal with it and you just play something else first. So Diablo, I think, is a major center point of the set right now. I think a lot of the same color combinations are still good. In Lorcana, like I mentioned the limited card pool a little bit, but it's just like the 200 cards that we get in per set. Things don't really drastically change suddenly in one set. Like the wheels move a little slower, and I don't mind it. We are getting a new set every 3 months, so if the sets were released less frequent, it was 4 months, I think things could get kind of stale. But I don't mind it that it's a little bit more frequent and it's like small adjustments. But red blue still a fantastic deck. I think it got some good ones. Red blue, it's one of the decks that can deal with the Diablo because you can play the Sprawls if you want to, but there's also like other cards like the Sisus and the big Sisu in particular. It's just kind of like it's a pretty good card against the green shell overall. Like if you happen to have even just one ice block on the board and you get the big Sisu, like it removes a lot of stuff that have 2 or less power. And then like, if there's something with 3, like you activate your ice block and that's also gone. I would say that green steel and red blue are kind of like the front runners immediately, but there's so much to be explored.
Yeah,
I think
my experience as well.
Yeah. While Ruby Sapphire and Emerald Steel are like the decks to beat at the very beginning, like there's lots of decks to explore. So and Diablo really is meta warping because Ruby Sapphire I play 4 Brawl, I play 4 big Sisus, 4 Medusas. I play a lot of good answers and still because in Emerald Steel with the entire discard package, at some point you will not have a removal for one of them, and suddenly they draw 2 cards a turn and you draw 1 a turn, or they draw 1 a turn plus whatever you draw. And then it's not just that they have the Diablo. Once they get to that point where maybe they ran you out of removal, they can snowball so quickly because they play the 4 Diablo, but also the 4 Sad Beast that you also have to deal with, or they snowball the game. And then I still think that the shift line is also pretty good from Diablo in the Bucky list where you go Bucky, shift Diablo on 2, already making you discard 1. And then the power in it is not just, okay, you used the small Diablo, a song, and the big Diablo too, and the Bucky. So it's, you used a lot of cards, but you already get at least 1 card back from the exerted Diablo on the board. And there's so much tempo on that because on turn 2, you already have Bucky and Diablo on board, which means on turn 3, it's very easy to just play another Diablo or an Aladdin, just any Floodborn. So yeah, I think Emerald Steel will be a very, very, very strong deck. The one deck that I did find that seemed to have, and maybe an even better matchup than, okay, Ruby Sapphire against Emerald Steel so far seemed close. I'm not sure how exactly the matchup goes, but Sapphire Steel seemed to have a pretty decent matchup against Emerald Steel with also the Babooms for removal, but also just ramping into Tinkerbell is incredible against Bucky lists.
Yeah, the meta warping and kind of like a Diablo-centric meta, like I want to add that there are ways to interact with it. It's not just Brawl. Baboom you just mentioned, I think that's actually a fantastic, it's not a new card, but it's a really good choice. It also takes out the Fluent Riders, which have been popping out from some of the Ruby Amethyst list. I've been playing, I think I was on my most recent Sapphire Steel, I was playing 3 Babooms. So I'm considering 4 because it's syncable. It's actually pretty legit. Like Baboom is back. Another card that I wanted to bring up in this like Diablo meta is Peter Pan. I don't know if you tried the new Peter Pan. It's a 3 cost, 2/3 with Rush and Evasive. Wow, that is like, if you're playing Amethyst and you're struggling with Diablo, that's the one you want to be playing. That is the perfect answer. It takes out the Diablo, stays on the board. Like, it's pretty good.
Interesting.
And it gives your evasives Rush, I think.
Interesting.
Oh, that's also true. Like, so if you have more evasives, that can be valuable.
That doesn't really matter, but like the way you trade into Diablo is great.
I kind of like that though.
I mean, that's
you use it to kill a Diablo, it should stick because it's evasive, and then maybe next turn you can just like sync friends with it or something like that and kind of refuel their hand. Like, it seems pretty good. Yeah.
Another card from the previous sets that seems like in the Emerald Steel it can take a little bit for the mirror is actually just the Floodborn Uninkable Evasive Flynn Rider, because it's just still a 2/3 Floodborn Evasive, and plotting it on the board suddenly means you don't need to have a removal for Diablo once they exert it. Maybe just take that trade.
And in that matchup, a little bit slow though, no? Maybe it's not. I don't know.
I mean, it's a Floodborn with a Bucky list, so it's like not that slow.
Mm-hmm.
Also, this is away from the Diablo discussion, but I've also faced a bunch of Ruby Amethyst decks where now more so than ever, like you really need to answer what they're doing, because they have an incredible amount of reach in the late game. And so if you're passing for a few turns, maybe they get 3 or 6 lore from the 2-cost Flynn Rider from set 4. And then on top of that, later in the game, they will still flood the board with goats and with rabbits and goats and small creatures. And then on top of the goat reach in the late game, they also have the super goof. And then it's very hard to stop them from going to 20 once they've gotten a good early game in.
Yeah. That's interesting. What do you think the power level of Ruby Amethyst lies? Do you think it has potential to be a tier 1 deck at set 4?
Maybe. It's like we'll see.
It's early.
I
Yeah.
cannot say yet.
Brendan can't give up the color combination. He has to just keep going.
Mhm.
Yeah, does it go in the garbage or does it not? No, I really love blue red. That's like probably my favorite deck. Even of set 3, I just felt like blue red was a bit volatile for Atlanta, so that's why I took Ruby Amethyst. Also, like Brian mentioned, as controversial as it probably is, the Ruby Amethyst mirror was a really, really good matchup for us, just statistically. So yeah, I thought it would be the most played deck, so that's why I brought it. Yeah, so what about these sort of tier 2-ish decks with things like Emerald, Amber? We have what was the best deck of day 1, Emerald
Oh, man.
Amethyst. Emerald Amethyst, that was like touted as the best deck. It was playing the new Ursula.
I don't know. Like, where do I start? Like, I want to, like, I have so much to say about both of these. I know we already been like going on for a while, so I don't want to keep it too long. But if I may start with that Ember Emerald, it is so fun. It's not that great, but like the shell of the 4 times painting the roses red and 4 times the muses is absolutely hilarious. Like, it's just like the things you do, like because you already have some singers on the board very often. Like you have like a 2-cost green Ursula or something, and then like you play the muses on 4, and then you like sing painting the roses red, and you can return like 3 power, essentially 3 power characters to the hand. It's just like the muses is really, really legit. The deck overall, though, like it's a meme. Like I'm not gonna lie. Like it really, like, this is one Sisu gets played and you're done. Like you're not coming back from a single Sisu or board clear. In a board centric matchup, it's pretty interesting. I feel like playing that and like doing the big songs. I think Look at This Family is still a card that people are sleeping on. I think it's very good. It was a big song. Like just looking at 5 cards, putting 2 to hand. I think it's really easy to sing. Like it's super easy to sing. It's inkable. So like I think it's an excellent card. And but the deck just like it's not very well rounded. I have to admit. But it is fun.
Mm-hmm. What about this Emerald Amethyst? That was the day 1 deck.
So yeah, I mean that's what I played. Like so this was what I made a video about this like day 1. It's like because everyone was asking me what's the best deck, and then I'm just like for like 2 days I was just like I don't know. Then I just like snapped, and I'm just like screw it. Like I'm gonna make a video and just like say what I like, make a wild guess what's the best deck, and I played this for like 20 games. Like the lab games that you guys probably might have also tried like before the like season like began. Like the quality of players is like very much like varying, so like you can't necessarily get good games in. It's some kind of like everything works type of thing, but still I went like 20 wins and 0 losses. I'm just like, okay, like Emerald Amethyst was very good in last set, and there's a lot of great inclusions that you can just like implement into the already existing shell. Like you can replace your Pascals with Pegasus, you can add Diablo, which is amazing, and like the 7-cost big Ursula. Why isn't anyone playing it? It's so good with the 2-cost green Ursula. Like it is so good. Like suddenly your 2-cost, because normally you play the 2-ink Ursula just for like the discard, and like they're just kind of chilling out. Then you have a 1/3, and it doesn't do a whole lot. But suddenly, like with the Giga Ursula, I'm gonna go with the Giga Ursula. With the Giga Ursula, like even the 2-cost Ursula on the board just becomes like this huge threat. And I don't know how long it's gonna take. I feel like someone is gonna win up. Well, gonna make it might not be this exact list that I have made. Like it's a bit of like maybe bare bones and kind of like unrefined. But I think someone is gonna win. Maybe like could be Chicago, could be one of the other events. Is gonna win it with Emerald Amethyst, and then more people are gonna start playing. Right now, it seems like all the Emerald players are opting for Steel instead of Amethyst, but Amethyst works just fine. What do you guys think?
I have a question in regards to, because I know we talked about set 4 list like super early on, the week 0 as Brendan calls it, and a lot of people talk about the Ruby Amber deck. Now I know a lot of the Ruby Amber decks aren't even the Mufasa decks at the moment. It just seems like they're really straightforward kind of powerful decks, and I know Moyen, these are the types of decks that you're not necessarily a fan of because they are so straightforward. But I think you did mention that, okay, if it is just so powerful enough that you would play it, maybe you'd consider it. So, Savjz, have you seen that deck pop up a little bit more, or has it really kind of decreased? Do you still think...
Ruby Amber?
Yes, yeah.
So Ruby Amber is in an interesting spot. I haven't really played like the song version much, but Mufasa definitely got better. My first instinct was when it was like, okay, like Mufasa got way better, and it must be tier 1. But now I'm like, is it tier 1? I'm just like, I'm not like fully sold on it yet. But I do want to say that the new Amber Gastone, the 3-cost Gastone, is like absolutely brilliant in that deck, because you have those powerful powerful Ruby 6 drops, which include Medusa, but there's also like other ones. There's like maybe if you want to play the new Mulan, whatever. Like there's a lot of really strong like 6 drops, even 7 drops if you're playing Surfer Stitches. And like the Gastone, the 3-cost Gastone, even though it's uninkable, is such a crazy card. It's so good to play a 6 drop on 4. It's so good to play a 7 drop on 5, and it's just like the 2/4 stat line is also nothing to like laugh at. So it is a really good chance that you use it to get 2 mana, like 2 mana. I repeat, like that's so good to get 2 mana, and it still might be there next turn. If it isn't, like it might have gotten a trade. The Gastone is very good, very very good.
Funny thing about that
or
card,
like those like
Yeah, sorry, I was going to say, funny thing about that card, I remember I saw it when it was like leaked super early, because a lot of the super rares got leaked. I don't know why I did this in my mind, but like I looked at the card and I thought it was like really bad, because for some reason I thought it was a 4/2. I was like, this card just gets removed, like it's just boom, or they just kill it. In my mind it seems so bad, but then I looked at the card when the set came out. I was like, wait, this is a 2/4, and yeah, that 4 willpower is like really really tough for your opponent to deal with. They're like, sure, you could use like the whole like we're talking about, it's like the Sisu Ice Block or the Brawls and stuff like that. But if that Gaston pops off once, like you said, you're ramping into such powerful cards.
So why the deck got so much better? I'm still not sure it can like keep up with Diablo. I'm not sure it can keep up with Sapphire. Yep. So it still has these issues, even if it got like a lot more consistent.
That's fair. Yeah.
That's exactly where I'm at as well. Like my first instinct was, I'm just like, wow, this got to be good. But I'm just like, the more I've seen it, it's good, but it's just. And the song version, I think the song version is worse than the Mufasa version, but I will admit that I don't really have experience with the song version, so I can't like say for sure how good it is. There's like a version essentially where you're playing the Ariels, and then you're playing, maybe there's some pair necessities, but the new song, like the Ruby song, like King Undisputed, or like where you make the Tremaine effect and stuff. So there's some like kind of interesting cards there, but I think Mufasa is the way to go, but we haven't seen the perfect list yet. This is one of those things when you get to Chicago, I'm really curious to see if there's going to be Mufasa lists that do well. And what exactly like versions are they running?
Regarding Green's purple standings in the current set, I think I can't really see it doing too well against Emerald Steel, because then the Ursula sing like the damage based songs, and the Robin Hood shift and the beasts are like very hard to deal with. Plus the Bucky stuff is also, I don't know if it can compete with that, but I think it might be, again, like last set, like the better deck against the Ruby Sapphire, because it will not want to play Bucky without the Flood Bonds. It can still play this ultra aggressive Merfolk Flynn Rider type curve, and then also have the reach for later with goats, and also the reach and card draw with rabbits. So I think it might be better for that.
That might be it when you like that, because I was wondering, why don't people play this? Well, because like Emerald Steel is super popular. It's probably more popular than Ruby Sapphire at the moment. Yes. So if Emerald Steel is the most popular deck and it has a good matchup on this, like it might be that Emerald Amethyst has some like waiting to do for its time to come for the meta to shift first.
Where do y'all think Whole New World lands in this metagame and Whole New World decks? Because that's been we talk about Diablo as the new card in set 4 that's warping the metagame, but Whole New World is a card that has warped the metagame since its inception in set 1. Where do you think those Whole New World decks lie in the current state of set 4? Are they just being gatekept by the power of Ruby Sapphire?
I think the only... Amber Steel definitely could still exist, but I think the front runner for real decks would be Sapphire Steel right now, where... I think Real is one of the tools that helps it be really good against Emerald, where it can still get a Real off when it's on low hand size after a few discards to really stabilize the game.
I think that the difference is like maybe because if you think about Wheel decks versus Ruby Sapphire, and then against these Emerald Steel decks, is against Ruby Sapphire to do the Wheel, your opponent has so much ink and can play so many powerful cards that. Yeah, you get the advantage out of, playing a wheel for free, getting a whole new hand and dumping a bit of a board. then your opponent does Sisu, whatever, removes the majority of it. And then against the Emerald Steel decks, I mean, the Ursula, if your opponent is doing the whole thing when they're playing the Sapphire Steel, they start to ink all their hand, and they've got 1 or 2 cards left, you've got a pretty good chance that it is the whole new world. If you're smart enough and you've happened to save an Ursula for that, or like even like what Moyne was saying, you use the Diablo to see, okay, do they have it? Maybe you can time that appropriately to make them get rid of the key card, which is the whole new world. But I guess that's not always the case. Like even the Amber Steel against the Emerald decks has done, like it was really good against the Emerald decks, right? It was just kind of the Ursula that would stop it. But then most of the time, especially with Amber Steel, you should have multiple songs in your hand, so it's not like, you know what I mean? Actually, wait, that doesn't matter because they're always going to choose the whole new world. But yeah, I don't know. It's interesting because if we think that whole new world is going to kind of come back, maybe it is more important that people start holding the specific cards to deal with it. But yeah.
I think it's a fascinating, because I would kind of like narrow it down. It's 2 decks. Like when we talk about the whole new world decks, it's the Sapphire Steel and it's the Amber Steel. Like that's it. Like I don't think there's anything else that you would even consider playing new world in. Those decks are good, but I my personal take right now, or like where I stand, but this is something can evolve over time as we see more events happen and stuff. But right now, I feel like Amber Steel potentially didn't really get enough. Like some of the pain points. I think the new So Big song is like pretty good, but I am not convinced that like Amber songs was like Amber Steel was like a winner in this set. It's just. But we'll see. Like maybe, like technically, there could be some like because it's good on board, and like if there's green stuff you can remove. But I'm not convinced on that. I think the Sapphire Steel is the more interesting deck right now. I haven't seen a version yet that's like like really would like knock me out, like to be like really really impressive. But there's a lot of interesting things that are going for it. Like the Fortis Sphere is the most obvious one. Like you're just playing 8 popsicles. It is fantastic. Sapphire Steel got better. It is significantly better, and it was already good. So there has to be a deck list somewhere in there. There's a lot of flexibility. We talked about the booms. It can be a good meta call right now. I also think that like with the added Fortis Spheres, and because we already have 4 popsicles for Fortis Spheres, for 4 quills, and like I would say that 2 dimes is kind of the standard. Scuttles are suddenly like pretty legit, and I think there's a lot going for there, but I have not seen anyone like post like, oh, I did so well. Maybe there hasn't been that many events yet, but there's so much going on. So it's even as Tinkerbell, I think the 6-cost Tinkerbell is fantastic against any like green deck, really any Emerald deck. When you slam a turn 4 Tinkerbell, it's just like super powerful because it stops all of them. Like everything's just like stop right there. Whatever you were doing is like it's because the ability to deal the 2 damage. And it's just a big boy and sing big songs. One more card that I wanted to like kind of like when we on this subject, or 2 more cards. Okay, 2 more really quickly. You guys need to try Maurice's Workshop. Just play this one, but try it in that deck, and you're gonna be like, "What?" Like it doesn't look amazing. The card in a vacuum is not that like crazy good. But Maurice's Workshop, when you're playing the 8 popsicles, I'm not just say 8 popsicles. It's like close enough. So when you're playing 8 popsicles with that, it's pretty wild how many it can draw. When you get to those spots where you do like mega ramp early, and then you just have it on board, and then you just play like popsicle, and then you pay 2 mana, like 2 mana total, to like draw 2 cards, and then you just like keep drawing, and then you have a Tamatoa board where you just like activate your dime, and you get like 14 lore. I think the best I've had was like 13 lore in a single turn, something totally crazy. It's really interesting. Okay, one more card. Okay, one more. Just one more. I know I'm like rambling a little bit here, but the new Ariel, the 6-cost Ariel with the ward. That is a super interesting card for the Ruby matchup, because like you've seen the Be Prepared getting kind of like shifted out. Like the board clear is now the Sisu, and the big Sisu, it takes out most of the stuff, and like and you can combo it with ice blocks, but you cannot target your ice block on the 6-cost ward Ariel. And you almost like, even though, like Ruby Sapphire might have items too, with the Fortis Spheres, with the popsicles, you are usually the one with more items, I would say. Like, not necessarily always, because there's like icebox and stuff, but like, you play the 6-cost Ariel, and they maybe only have 1 prep or 2 preps in the deck. It's not going anywhere. You play that, you play a dime, you win. Like it's good. Like they can't do anything to the 6-cost Ariel. You just keep like you activate it once. The turn you play the Ariel, you gain 5. Next turn you quest with it for 5. You activate the dime again. That's 15 lore in like just like couple of turns, and there's nothing the green deck can do if they don't have exactly Tremaine or Prep. But so that's another card that's really going to be interesting to kind of experiment with. And like, what matchup is good for today? 1 or 2, probably not 4, because we already have other 6 drops. But,
yeah. That card's so interesting because it's not core to any deck's idea, but like it's a very good anti-current Ruby.
So good. It is such a good card. I don't know if it's good against anything else though. Yeah. So I'm like, but I think you because of the new worlds and everything, I think you can kind of get away with just playing 1 because you draw so many cards. And there's other deck manipulation as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is an interesting one.
Uninkable tech cards. That's it's a subject for this. Yeah, we talk about it. I think you're right. I think you're right. It's just kind of a meme because in the lead up to ATL, had a bunch of people message me and were like, "Hey, I loved your Ruby Amethyst list. I'm playing Ruby Amethyst. Here's my list." And it was my list, but they added Book, 2 Scars, and like all these uninkable tech cards. I was like, that is not the same. You cannot be doing that. Like that is so antithetical to the whole reason I'm bringing this deck. So yeah, it's just, I do think this was a card that I flagged in spoiler, and yeah, it's interesting because Bell is just like giga unplayable now. Which is funny.
But it's the Aria, like it's just like I'm only bring one more point that like okay, like it's only good against Ruby Sapphire, but I would still remind that like if you're playing against any deck that just like doesn't play any items, it's just like flat out like quests for 5. It is something that has ward, so it can sing all the steel songs, but those are quests for 5. 5 is a lot.
Yeah, Question for 5 is good. We actually played Maurice's Workshop back in set 2 a little bit.
I didn't know that. I started with set 3, really, so.
Yeah, so in set 2, we played it a bit in the original Ruby Sapphire list, I believe.
Yeah, I always loved Workshop in set 2.
We were cooking. That was the debut of Ruby Sapphire. Yeah, interesting times. It's kind of cool how it comes full circle. Definitely a powerful card.
It was way overperforming. Like I was like, it's probably going to be okay, but it was just like giga overperforming. It was just like, wow, like it fits so well with all those popsicles.
So for me, looking at the macro of this format, just personally, the deck that I'm trending towards, no surprise, is going to be Ruby Sapphire, but I have my eyes closely on Sapphire Steel. I think Sapphire Steel fits a lot of the bill for me. The issue is just that Ruby Sapphire matchup, but I believe in the Lorcana deck building community to which I can net deck them because if I remember, if I call back to set 3, the Ruby Sapphire actually wasn't in the metagame in set 3 for a while because it had such a bad matchup against Ruby Amethyst. And the question was like, oh, if we can just shore up this Ruby Amethyst matchup, this was a metagame that was being dominated by Blue Steel. They're like, oh, if we can shore up the Ruby Amethyst matchup, Ruby Sapphire could finally come back in the metagame. And they did it. They built the list. They found a list that did shore up the matchup. And actually flipped the matchup too, which is crazy. And it became like one of the best decks in the game. So I hope we can do the same for the Sapphire Steel. Because I also believe in the truth of 8 popsicles.
There's also like I think one of the biggest like selling points for that is that this has been kind of like we've been talking about a lot, how like kind of like Emerald Steel has definitely been like one of the front runners. I would say it's the most popular deck, and I'm pretty sure that there's like some ways to build Sapphire Steel in a way where like that matchup in particular is like really good because you can take out some of the key cards, and then you have those big spells, and then you have the new worlds as well. I think Sapphire Steel could potentially have a lot going for it if you're expecting a field with a lot of Emerald Steel.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's the 4-bar boom for Diablos. It's the potential of mulliganing for the Will into turn 4 Tinkerbell, and then also being able to New World past
New World. New World as you might not even need a New World, but it's like just a cool like extra out against any discarding type of stuff. It's just kind of like any discard they did might go like kind of out the window, and you might still be fine even without it. Like I think it's just a lot to be excited for. But the lists are still like they are just all over the place. We'll see by the time of Chicago like what is the highest performing Sapphire Steel.
Well, when is Chicago?
2 weeks.
2 weeks, yeah.
Huh. Where you can get last minute ticket.
I wish. I'm on that wait list, baby. Let's see.
Yeah, and there's another event like this weekend, right? Online, so that's also going to be one to look out for. I don't know if I'll play it myself, but
I'm playing in.
There's definitely going to be a lot of deck lists coming out of it. It's going to be like some of the first like real set 4 deck lists. So that should be a pretty exciting time as well. Besides the Sapphire Steel and like how are people going to build it? The Mufasa deck that I mentioned, that's like really interesting to me because I think there's something there, but I think it's like just every version that I've seen so far, it's just all over the place. There's so many different variants. do you want to play Mulan, like the big Mulan? Like, is it any good? Like, I still don't even know. I still don't know if the big Mulan is good or not.
Yeah,
I'm like,
we were
change on a
talking
daily
about that.
basis.
We were talking about that Mulan a lot to say that like is it so like because the interesting thing about that Mulan is if there's a smaller Mulan on the board, you just really have to respect that if they have the bigger Mulan, they just wipe your board. It's like you like because even if they don't have it, it's like oh kind of do I just do my thing, but when that shift comes out, because it is like it's 6 damage to 3 things right or 5 damage to 3 things if it connects, it's insane.
Yeah.
So.
I mean, you probably want to play like at least one because then because the small Mulan is already by itself the one that comes with damage, not the 2 drop. The 1 drop. Yeah. The 1 drop by itself is already kind of worth playing when you have Rapunzel's and Julieta Madrigal, I think was the card. Even you have those, so like if you have the big Mulans, it's just even if you have just one in your deck, it kind of makes all the small Mulans like this threat thing where your opponent is going to respect it and play around it.
Before we
don't have it in your hand.
Finish up talk about deck lists, I do want to mention a meme deck list that is going around on Pixelborn at the moment. I don't think it's very good, but it is very funny. Have you guys seen the puppy deck list from set 4? You play all puppies, well, as many puppies as you can play, and then you play 4 Bruno Madrigal, and then you play 4 of it's like the grandmother, the Alma, I think it is. So Alma allows you to search your deck for a Madrigal, and then you take Bruno. And Bruno is the card that when you top it, you name a card. If it's the top card of your deck, then I think it's like you gain 3 lore or something like that. People have just been like, it's a big meme, but like if you can get it off, I don't know, like it's kind of funny.
Mufasa.
I think Bruno.
I was just gonna. I don't know. This is a not so relevant comment, but Mufasa is the most dogmatic card in Lorcana. Those Mufasa players, man, they are Mufasa players. They believe in Mufasa. I've never seen a more like. It's so weird that card has just gathered this like this cult of players. Because I mean, man, I had some people coming up to me like, "Dude, Mufasa is the truth." I'm like, "What?" And it won the tournament. So, yeah, what am I gonna say?
Yeah, I mean that's not really the Mufasa everyone was talking about.
Yeah, but they forget about that part. You know, Mufasa won the tournament. Yeah, it's super interesting. Actually, you know, we almost have gone 2 hours here, but I'm just a glutton for punishment. So, Savjz, you mentioned you're like, you know, there's not that much of an impact. We have sets every 3 months, small card pool. That's going to happen. Actually, the impact will be less and less, most likely by set, because the format is non-rotating. Do you think that there is a rotation or a rotating format on the horizon for Lorcana? This would, I would presume this would be in conjunction with there being an Eternal format that is open. Each would have separate ban lists. But do you think rotation is in the books for Disney Lorcana?
I think so, but I don't think we're going to hear anything about it for another 2 years. It's going to be 2 years from now. So because like what happened with Magic was I remember they started with like they had a 2-year rotation, and then at some point they went to 18 months. Like they shortened it, but that didn't really work out. Like it wasn't good for their like paper players. It was just too fast. And now these days Magic has 3-year rotation, and I kind of like considering how. I don't know, like if you guys disagree on this, but I would think that like there's some like portion at least of like Lorcana like players who are kind of on the like casual side, and when you think about like casual players, like you definitely want to have like one of those like slower rotating formats. So honestly, like right now, like even announcing any kind of rotation, I think would be just confusing. There's no reason to do that. I think that when we go 2 years from now, they will probably do like a 3-year rotation. If I like, like 3 sets, like, so every year like that, but set stays legal for 3 years. If I had to guess, but this is less purely speculation, but I would expect them to replicate the Magic the Gathering 3-year rotation at this time. Like
also, in the rule document for the challenge events, you could already see that they were mentioning a ban list, so that might be coming soon.
Yeah, and I strongly believe that rotation is better than like a Yu-Gi-Oh type ban list, because Yu-Gi-Oh is an eternal card game that functions off a very large ban list. But yeah, I think you're right. It's just an interesting thing to talk about because I believe in something Richard Garfield laid out a long time ago. Said there's 2 options for a game: either rotate or power creep, and power creep is not sustainable.
Yep. But there's going to be like the next step before that is going to be the sort of build around. So let's say for an example, like Jim Hawkins is like good if you have lots of locations. This is just like, I think Jim Hawkins kind of landed on the weak side, but I think that there's going to be more like thematic expansions where you just have these like build around strategies where you're like strongly encouraged to kind of like these tribal mechanics. So far, what we've seen, like when it comes to like brooms and these type of like tribal mechanics, they have
The
not
hero
been
decks,
very,
right?
yeah, like hero decks, or let's say like broom deck or whatever pirate decks, they have not been good enough. But I would start expecting, like, I don't know if like with the next couple of sets, but maybe like set 7 and forward, that so at some point they're just gonna start kind of like making more powerful tribes, and then every now and then we're gonna have like an entirely new archetype come out where it's just kind of like you play 20 new cards in it, and then maybe there's some like, you know, this kind of like payoff cards. So essentially what that would mean is that you have a card that in a like context in a certain deck, it's just like better than the other cards, and then you play cards that are kind of like less powerful on their own, but they enable the best card. So that's kind of the type of cards that kind of like make swings. Like if overall the deck lands at powerful, it's kind of like it can create new things. So I would right now, I think the game is kind of like well balanced, where it's like cards individually, and a lot of the best decks just kind of like play the best cards, but I think we're going to start seeing more powerful tribals in the future.
You actually remind me there, Savjz, about just speaking about the whole tribal thing, and I remember also thinking like, oh, I don't think Amber Steel really got anything. But I think if people want to try out Amber Steel this set, I'd recommend checking out. I think it was Bannable Harka who made a list, and it has the Phil in it. He's the 4-cost inkable 2/3 quest for 2 that your heroes get Challenger +1, but then whenever you play a hero card, you gain 1 lore. So that deck is kind of, it's taken out the flu package. It has the lanterns. It's very kind of mid-range.
It's an interesting one, yeah.
Yeah, it has potential maybe, and I think it's definitely like if you're a true Amber Steel believer and it's one of your favorite decks, I'd say definitely give it a shot because it definitely looks intriguing.
But on kind of the power, I just want to go a little bit back to that. Like kind of like the tribal like deck building is one way to sort of avoid the like quick power creep, because if there were no tribals, basically the only thing you can do really to make people play the new cards is just to make better cards. But that's one of those things where it's just like, okay, like in order to play the deck, you just gotta like kind of commit, and then you don't just add the 4 new best cards. Like right now, maybe it's a little bit like that. It's just like, you know, you stick those 4 Diablos in like any green deck and it gets a little bit better. It doesn't need to really synergize with anything. But like when it comes to battling, like, you know, just strictly printing better cards, having those like synergies and making synergies more powerful is a good way to do it.
Yeah, should be interesting. All right. If you've been listening to this podcast and you're like, what decks are they talking about? Links to the description. They'll be Dreamborns, so check out decks there. Savjz, thank you for coming on the podcast. I want to give you a chance to shout out where people can find you, what you're up to, your stream schedule, all that good stuff.
Yeah. So Savjz Lorcana on YouTube. I might be like chilling for just a little bit, but I've been doing, usually I can do live streams around like 10 to 2 p.m., like 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. PST, around that, and then I post a video like every now and then. Like it kind of depends. Like at some point I was doing like daily stream, daily video pretty much, but then sometimes I'm a little bit more casual. It's just like I'm like a little all over the place, but yeah. And then thanks guys again for like having me. This is so much fun. Like I'm genuinely enjoying. These are really interesting discussions, and this is awesome. I love the podcast. I watch every episode, even when I'm not. Well, actually, the ones that I'm on, I don't watch because I don't know what happened. But spoilers. But like every episode that it's like a thing for me on Fridays. Just like put Podcana on when the new episode hits. So
Nice.
thanks guys for the awesome show.
And thank you all for listening. If you want to help us out, then what they can do is leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. We'll be collecting those submissions for the past couple weeks to do a draw for the shirt. We're giving away a free shirt to one lucky reviewer. It also helps us a lot when you review us. And I already said that, but it really helps us a lot. There's video version of this on YouTube at youtube.com/@Podcana podcast. To subscribe while you're there. Twitter's @BrentAPG, Kalbatek_CG, Moin_HS, and @Savjz. Hope you all enjoy your first few weekends of Set 4 metagame, and we'll keep our eyes peeled for Chicago. And yeah, good luck to everybody competing in Chicago. It's going to be fun. You guys get to play a new format. Anyway, thank you all so much. See you next time.